Okay, you gonna make me host?
So, okay.
There's somebody over there who looks.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on your screen, your video, so you can say hello.
I'll put my glasses on so I can see what I'm saying. Enough, but not too. Who's there? There's
You can say
Eliezer
hi.
Garner.
They can hear you now.
Hi, Eliezer.
Hey, how you
How are
doing?
Baruch Hashem, how you doing?
Baruch Hashem, today's my Hebrew birthday.
Mazel tov. On the English or the Hebrew?
Hebrew.
Mazel
Yeah.
tov.
Am I, Baruch Hashem. I think I see Aryae Coopersmith.
Hey, Reb Eliezer, good to see you. Happy
Hey,
birthday.
good to see you.
Let it sameach.
It's only been a few years, right?
Now, what's a few decades between
Yeah,
friends?
well, a few decades, right?
Hi, it's Neila on the side here.
Hi, Neila.
Hello. It's been a long, long time.
I only see 4 people on my screen. Oh, well. Hey, nice pictures of Shlomo there.
Yeah.
Beautiful pictures.
I don't have more than just Eliezer right now. My son-in-law, Menachem Creditor, is helping me get my computer going. And without him, I would probably be in the total dark. So as
I understand. I understand.
Rebbetzin Neila, are you ready to start in about a minute?
I'm ready to start in a minute. Is everybody on?
We're going to start before everybody gets on.
We are? Are you going to start with that Shlomo little piece?
No, I was going to do that after you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm like, Mama, I'm ready. I'm here, right?
So I'm going to, in 2 minutes, I'm going to introduce. I'm going to mute everybody. I'm going to introduce you.
Is that Yehudit Katz speaking?
That's Ephraim Krug speaking.
Oh, Ephraim Krug. Okay. Shikoach.
Yeah.
Yeah, shikoach to all the people who put this together. It's organizing the Shlomo Chevra has always been a major task of anybody.
It's kind of like herding cats, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. My friends, I'm going to mute everybody and then unmute Rebbetzin. Rebbetzin Neila, you need to unmute yourself.
You're off.
Okay.
Starting the program, thank you so much, is Rebbetzin Neila Carlebach.
I'm going to start off with a little quote from Shlomo, because it's so beautiful. He says, there are few places in the world where you know that God is real, that people are real, and their children are the holy of holiest. There are some places left in the world when you walk, you know that peace in the world is possible, but love between people is the highest God revelation, where you feel with your innermost being that every one of us is a little prophet. And for 10 years, I had this in the House of Love and Prayer. So starting with that quote, let you know how important and how deep the House of Love and Prayer was for Shlomo. But it came out of necessity as well as out of wanting, because Shlomo, when he got invited to the Berkeley Folk Festival, opened up a whole new world to himself. And when he announced one day after one of his concerts a few years in that he was going to have a Shabbos time, if anybody wanted to come to meet in front of his hotel, he was expecting maybe 20, 30 people. He said maybe 400 or 500 people showed up. And he says, and they were all ready for Shabbos, and they were all ready to pray. So he took them all to the park. And after they went to the park, they didn't get to land there very often because the police kindly didn't take kind to them, according to Shlomo. So he walked around looking for a place, and he saw a yidel on the street looking for the last two people of his minyan. And in spite of it, they didn't let the kids, his kids, he called them, come in. So Shlomo decided to create his own place. And what place more than a house for love and a house for prayer? That was the beginning. And the people who came there were a lot of, hippelach, and a lot of chevra that he had met along the way. And thus it began. My experience of the House of Love and Prayer is limited compared to most of you out there, because we were in New York. And the first time I came, it was because Shlomo had asked me to marry him, and I didn't know what I was getting into. So he brought me to his mother, and that was something else. And then he brought me to San Francisco in the House of Love and Prayer, where I felt, believe it or not, much more at home for a conservative teacher. And from there, it was like a magic feeling, as on Sukkot, we slept under the table because there was no floor room, because the whole world was over sleeping in part of the Sukkot celebration. And the shaking of the lulav the next day was monumentally long. And we did everything we could to make this Chag beautiful and to make the House of Love and Prayer beautiful. When I was there, it felt wonderful. So what I wanted to share about the House of Love and Prayer was stories that Shlomo told me, stories that he felt that, and this is kind of crazy, I'm not comparing the Ribbono Shel Olam to Shlomo or vice versa, but when God looked at the void, he knew. I hear a beeping, is that something wrong?
You're all good.
Okay, when Ribbono Shel Olam looked at the world,
Somebody who's on the bus.
Turn off your cell phone.
Not you.
yourself.
No.
When, here we go, take 3. God created the world because there was a void, and he wanted people in it. He wanted somebody there for him to communicate. He wanted to fill something that was a need in him. And I always think that Shlomo created the House of Love and Prayer because there was a need in him to communicate on his level, to teach on his level. Prior to his coming to the House of Love and Prayer, he was a teacher a little bit in New Jersey and Lakewood when he became a rabbi there. And they thought his speeches were too long, and they thought the kids who he got to say the Devar Torah, because they thought maybe they'd like it better, were doing his job, so they fired him. But before they fired him, there was a piano in their room there, and he sat down and he started writing little music, as he said. So everything started in New Jersey. He was like a vortex of energy there. And it created, and when he found people on the street and people from the concert, and who wanted to learn, who wanted to become something, he knew that he found his niche. So the House of Love and Prayer became for him a place of pride, a place to give over in his manner what he wanted to give over, and a place where everybody belonged, where everybody could come in and everybody could be part of a community and share. And the stories of the House of Love and Prayer intimately will come from everybody else, because, as I said, I wasn't there long enough. I went to one wedding, which is Malka and Naaman's wedding. And that was my first Shlomo wedding that lasted 5 hours. And I was in such a state of, holy cow, I can't believe this is happening with all that was going on in the singing and the dancing and the marriage. It was so beautiful. I didn't know. So I was a new kid on the block at that time. You were all there much longer. And I just want to say that I'm honored to be part of you. And I have one more Shlomo thing that I wrote once. I know that God gave this generation a gift. And I know that I love more people than I imagined I could ever even know. I know that I have to learn a little Torah every day. I know I can still hardly bear the thought that Shlomo, the sweet singer of Israel, is no longer here. But I do feel him hovering between worlds. I know he is still working his magic. I know that he is sitting at God's right hand, bargaining with him to do more and more for his Yidden. God bless you, Shlomo. Bless us to know how to love all our brothers and sisters. Mamish, thank you for everything. Till we meet again.
This is a very special song, 1968. You know, all those revolutions going on the college campuses. And there was one boy, his name was George Cohen. Yeah, I think it was George. I know George, I think it was Cohen. He was one of the head who were leading this revolution at San Francisco State. And one day he was arrested for singing an obscene song. Then he came to the police. He was singing S.O.N.I., my name. And it was heartbreaking, you know, that what was his name, the director of the college, he's, what is Hakor or something. How come you don't even hear what is Hebrew, you know? You're the head of the college.
No, they thought the song was obscene, but it was a Hebrew song.
It was a Hebrew song, S.O.N.I., you know? Anyway, then he got married, and since he was already so famous in all the newspapers, there was this crazy story. So Life magazine came to film the wedding. It was unbelievable. And, you know, it was a different energy. The wedding began 4 in the afternoon. And, you know, Golden Gate Park, you have to leave at 12, the latest. And we were still in the middle of Shir Brochus. So you know what we did? There was a truck. We put Nosson and Kalle and someone holding the chuppah over them on the truck.
Moved from the wedding hall to the truck.
And we were not from the wedding hall, it was in Golden Gate Park. Went back to the house of love and prayer. And anyway, this boy George was really a master of words. And I made up a lot of nigunim at that wedding, which I don't even remember, but this is one of them. I said, George, give me some good words. He started singing, Lord, get me high, get me high, get me high. Lord, get me high, get me higher. Higher and higher, higher and higher, higher and higher and higher. Then I added some words to it. Lord, let me meet just one friend. Lord, let me meet just one friend. Then another. Lord, let me pray just one prayer. And so on, you know. And the end was, Lord, let me live till the great day comes, when the whole world will sing just one song. Higher and higher, higher and higher, higher and higher and higher. Was my big song for many years. Higher and higher, higher and higher, higher and higher and higher. But then I'm singing. Yours is all I hear, so
Our guest, the singing rabbi, Reb Shlomo Carlebach, known throughout the world. His beautiful original music, copied by many, never duplicated. We'll be right back.
Rebbetzin Neila, thank you so much. Now we're going to hear from Reb Aryae Coopersmith.
Thank you, Reb Ephraim, and thank you so much, Neila, for your beautiful words, your beautiful introduction. I'm just setting my clock here for myself. And, thank you, Reb Sam and Yehuda and Yaakov, for all your efforts and everybody in bringing us together. It's really pretty amazing to be here with old friends. We're looking at each other. My God, it's been so long. After Reb Shlomo passed away in 1994, with a little prompting from Reb Zalman, I felt like I needed to do something to pay back, to pay forward all that I had received from Reb Shlomo. And I didn't know how to do it, but I thought, well, maybe I could tell the story of the House of Love and Prayer. Maybe I could write it down. Looking back, it was really a Meshuggah project. It was so crazy. There were so many lessons to be learned. And I wasn't such a fast learner. And it took me 16 years to finally finish telling the story. But I did learn an important lesson that I want to share with you. And that is, and those of you who are at the house, maybe you'll agree with me, it's impossible for anyone to tell the story of the House of Love and Prayer, period. There were so many of us, so many journeys, so many places we were coming and going, and we landed in very different places in the world. So as far as I'm concerned, there's only one way to tell the story, and that is together. It's like we're each a letter in the Sefer Torah, right? And one letter in the Sefer Torah doesn't do anything. And if one letter is missing, it's no good. The only way to make it complete, the only way to make it real is for all of us to be there. So today I feel like we really have a chance to do that. For my letter, I want to just share a few memories from the very early beginning of the House of Love and Prayer. So it starts for me on Haight Street in the summer of '67. Anybody remember the Summer of Love in San Francisco? And a few of us are there with Reb Shlomo on Haight Street, and we're walking down Haight Street. And Elia and Miriam, it's so good to see you here today. Baruch Hashem, it's just wonderful. And the two of you were there, and Elia, you were carrying Noah on your shoulders, and we're walking down Haight Street. Young people are coming in by the busload from all over the country. And Reb Shlomo, he's running in and talking to everybody he can get to and engaging them, bringing them to talk to all of us, hugging them. And what does he do? He invites them all to go to Elia and Miriam's house for Shabbos. And they've got a one-bedroom house in Forest Knolls, probably 900 square feet, where the three of them are living. And, imagine 50 people showing up there. And I say, Shlomo, this is crazy. How can you do that? It's not fair. And Miriam says, oh, they're all such holy angels. We want them to come. And Shlomo says, Brother Arya is right. We really need to have a house in San Francisco. And we're all going, wow, this is amazing. A house in San Francisco. What do we call it? And he says, let's call it the House of Love and Prayer. And somebody says, what's that? What's a House of Love and Prayer? And Shlomo says, when you walk in, someone loves you. When you walk out, someone misses you. Right? And we didn't know a lot of Torah then. We didn't know a lot of Yiddishkeit, but we remembered that. We remembered what Shlomo told us. And in my view, at that moment, the House of Love and Prayer came into being, right at that moment on Haight Street. Of course, that was the soul of the House of Love and Prayer. The body was a different story. There were 9 months, where Shlomo was talking about the house, and we were all saying, okay, so when is it going to happen? It hadn't happened. Ellie and Miriam were very on fire. They wanted more Shabbos, more Torah, more Yiddishkeit, more everything. So they left and they were on their way to Israel. They were staying on the East Coast. I believe it was with Elia's family. We fast forward to April of '68. I'm on Haight Street and I walk into a realtor's office with $350 in my bank account. Where did I get the $350? It was from a friend named John Seaman. John wasn't Jewish, but he was hanging out with us in those days. I see some of you remember John. He was a divinity student at a Presbyterian seminary. And John said to me one day, maybe it's not Shlomo's job to physically start the house. Maybe it's our job. And he offered me his life savings, $350. So I walk in, I tell the realtor we're looking for a house. He ushers me into his Cadillac and we drive across Golden Gate Park up north to Arguello Boulevard, very nice neighborhood. And he shows me this beautiful Georgian house, all the rooms and the stories and everything. And I'm thinking, how can we ever afford this? And so I asked him, how much is the rent? And he says, well, it's $300 a month, but there is a $50 security deposit. I thought about it for about 1 second and I said, okay, we'll take it. So early days of the House of Love and Prayer. I move into the house that night. My wife at the time, Ruthie, doesn't want to move in. So I grab a sleeping bag, I pack some underwear and a toothbrush in my backpack. I move into the house, I sleep on the floor. Eventually, I persuade Ruthie to move in. I had to offer her a few incentives, but she moves in. I call up Shlomo, and Shlomo is very excited. And he immediately contacts Ellie and Miriam and persuades them to cancel their trip to Israel, turn around, come back to San Francisco, and spend a year in San Francisco living with Ruthie and me at the house. And meanwhile, at all of Shlomo's concerts, he starts talking about the House of Love and Prayer, and he's traveling around the world. He invites the whole world to join us for Shabbos. And then he puts the address on his business card. And you'll remember, he passes out about 500 of his business cards an hour. So pretty soon, people start showing up at our doorstep. And, sometimes even when Shlomo wasn't there, there'd be 100, 200 people. How on earth did we feed them all? What did we do? How did we pay the rent? It was amazing. It was like, we were Bnei Israel wandering through the desert. And we were living on manna, right? And we were following the pillar of a cloud by the day and a pillar of fire by night. And somehow we got through it. And when Shlomo is not in town, then Reb Elyah and I are leading services on the Shabbos. We were learning as we went. I have to say, Elyah was doing most of the leading, and I was standing up there smiling and looking like I knew what I was doing, but eventually I was learning as well. And so, there's so many stories. I'm going to leave it to the rest of you to fill in some of the details of what those early days are like, but we were truly, truly living on miracles. I can remember times after Friday night when Shlomo was there for Shabbos, it would be 4 a.m. We've been like singing and dancing for 8 hours. And we're sitting around on the floor and we're studying the Ishbitzer, right? Or we're studying Reb Nachman. And often I would be tired and fall asleep, but somehow Reb Nachman was in the atmosphere and I was breathing in the Ishbitzer and Reb Nachman. So, here we are all this time later. There was the physical house, and there's still one today in Israel, but then there's also the spiritual House of Love and Prayer. And looking at all of you, we're still connected with each other. What did we get from Shlomo? Well, there were a few basics. We got the idea that a house of love and prayer is when you walk in, someone loves you. we learned how to do that. We learned how to welcome people. We learned how to hug people. We learned how to connect. Another big thing about the house was Shabbos. Shabbos is it. Shabbos is all of us together. And beyond Shabbos, there's the great Shabbos, right? He was always talking about the great Shabbos. And if we keep doing Shabbos, we bring the great Shabbos to us. We bring Mashiach. So I just want to offer my gratitude to everyone involved, and let's tell the story.
Shukayach, Reb Aryae, thank you so much. And also, I should have said thank you a whole lot more to Rebbetzin Neila. So my apologies on overlooking that thank you, but thank you so much. I was just a little bit nervous to jump into the video. Ohel Shlomo welcomes you to this live video, to this live stream, with special thanks to Rabbi Sammy, Rabbi Yaakov, Yehuda Katz, Tamara, Simchat Shlomo, and everyone who has worked so hard to put this program together. If you have any other thoughts or memories to share, please email us at ohelshlomo613@gmail.com. We look forward to seeing you. The next speaker is Dina Solomon. I'm not sure that I have actually seen her here. I think Ben Sion Solomon is here. I'm going to see if
we are here. Yes, we are here.
Oh, fantastic.
We are both here.
So you're on.
Can you get us up there?
Sure.
Can you get us up there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in first. When Yehuda asked me to speak, so I said, well, we didn't really spend that much time at the House of Love and Prayer because we were actually living 4.5 miles up north in a little town in Mendocino County. And we had a newborn daughter. And I think the first time I met Shlomo was in Golden Gate Park. And after he asked me my name and gave me a hug, he of course said, when are you coming for Shabbos? So I'm pretty sure we went to the House of Love and Prayer once for Shabbos. I know we were there another time on Tisha B'Av. And we went to a wedding, that same wedding that Neila mentioned. We were at Malka and Naaman's wedding, which was beyond. But I'd like to talk a little bit about what the House of Love and Prayer was for me specifically. I think a lot of people have heard my husband's story many times, but for me, that first experience of coming into Shabbos, which I really had no background in Judaism at all, none at all. And coming into that place, all I remember is dancing in a circle, a lot of different kinds of people, feeling very welcomed, feeling very warm, and hearing words that I didn't know what they were, but being very drawn and enchanted by the music. And just by that feeling of being among people that were like just in my soul family. And then the next time we went, it was Tisha B'Av. And even though we knew that Tisha B'Av was some kind of day of mourning and fasting, when we got there, it was the day that Nama Leah was born, Yankele's daughter. And so it was kind of like Mazel Tov and Simcha and, what's going on here? And my daughter and Nama have been lifelong friends. They're still friends till today. And we still also, Nama is very much in our life and we love her. And then the other time we were there this is all happening in 1972. And so it was also Neman and Malka's wedding was like an amazing, I don't remember too much about it. But one thing is like the House of Love and Prayer for me is like looking back, I see that it was like a turning point in our lives. And I would say in a certain way that it was almost like a Beit Aliyah, like a lot of us who passed through the House of Love and Prayer ended up coming to Israel next stop because Shlomo said, well, you have to go to Israel. And somehow he put it into us so deep that we did it within a very short time. And I think that, we're also founders of the Moshav, and a lot of the things that Aryae was saying about why we need to have a house and how it was a place where when you walk in, you're loved, and when you leave, you're missed. That's really the same message that Shlomo gave us over us founding fathers of the Moshav. And we've been here from the very beginning. And hopefully we made it for many, many years into a kind of House of Love and Prayer, as well as, joining that feeling of learning Torah and living the biblical life on the land. So again, I'm thinking that, one of the holiest things in the world to me is to really be like a teacher of Aleph Bet. And that is what Shlomo was for us, especially for me, because I knew nothing at all. And, you know, he gave me my name. I had a different name before. He gave me that name, Dina. That became my name from then on. And he kind of put that seed, planted that spark so that I would continue learning and continue growing. And I really feel like we owe our whole lives to him. We owe our whole lives in the land and our children and our traditions, the music that we sing, everything. We owe so much to Shlomo. And that was it. The House of Love and Prayer was really the place where that seed was planted. So many thanks, and hope it keeps on growing and spreading its light out into the world.
Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Reb Ben Zion?
Right in. Okay, so I think probably I've told my story a million times. I'll try and skip all the repeats and get to some of the essence, but like Dina said, we were not really integral parts of the House of Love and Prayer, but it was kind of our entrance. It was, first of all, my really first close experience with Shlomo, and the point where, well, I arrived at the House of Love and Prayer with exact directions after I'd been asking if I could speak to a rabbi. I'd been kind of trying my best to enter into Yiddishkeit. I won't go into all the details, for about a year, and I really needed some guidance. And all the people that I knew living up in Albion, California, in communal situations, and people would say, Rabbi, I don't think there's a rabbi who's going to talk to somebody like you. And finally, there was one guy who said, yeah, there's a place in San Francisco, and there's a rabbi there, and he'll talk to you. I met him in Israel. His name is Shlomo Carlebach, and he gave me exact directions how to get to this place called the House of Love and Prayer. And I'm thinking, the House of Love and Prayer? That's exactly what I need right now. It's exactly what I'm searching for. And so I get into my broken down Studebaker 1949 pickup truck, and I drive to San Francisco, hoping I'm not going to stall when I get to the traffic lights. I finally pull into the no parking lot zone at the House of Love and Prayer, and there's a fellow standing outside. I get out of the car and he says, oh, we've been waiting for you. And he introduces himself, and his name is Naaman Rosen. And he says, what can I do for you? And I said, I've just been driving from before dawn. I've been driving for about 4 hours. Maybe I can get a drink and something to eat. He says to me, oh, that's the one thing I can't do, because it happens to be Shivasa B'Tammuz. It's a fast day. But if you're really hungry, come with me. He leads me through this basement, which is the shul, into the backyard. In the backyard, there's sitting Shlomo on a chair with a gigantic sefer open, and all the people of the house are sitting around on the grass, and Shlomo's teaching. Now, I had my list of all my questions that I needed to ask the rabbi. I didn't want to interrupt the learning, so I'm standing listening. And in the course of that learning, Shlomo answered all my questions. So the first thing I do is I go up to him and I say, what is this amazing sefer that you're learning from? All these wonderful thoughts that I needed so much. He says, oh, this is Rebbe Nachman, Likutei Moharan. So in one instant, I met my Rebbes, my two Rebbes. And so, as Dina said, the next thing that Shlomo said is, you're coming for Shabbos, right? And so I told him, I don't live here in San Francisco. I'm living quite a distance away. And he says, okay, so then it'll be next Shabbos. And like Dina said, I guess the first Shabbos I went by myself. And, you know, music is what really lights me up. And the music at the House of Love and Prayer, it entered my ears and entered my soul and entered my whole body. And the singing and the dancing, and Shabbos went on and on and on. I don't think we broke bread before midnight. And finally, you know, like I took my leave. I went back. I was bubbling over to trying to tell Dina how wonderful it was. But the truth is, it was a hard journey for us both, because I was experiencing it in a very different way than she had or would. And so I did convince her to go for Shabbos. We did go for Shabbos. And as she said, the next thing we did was we went to that wedding. And the Shlomo doing a wedding was, again, you know, it broke every image that I'd had. And I'd been to a lot of Jewish weddings before. As a kid, I used to sing in a little choir, and we used to sing sometimes at weddings. The wedding was just, you know, like there's a little ceremony there, but you knock it off in a few minutes, and then everybody eats and entertain themselves with dancing and everything. But to see a chuppah that went on for hours and hours and hours, and I see Shlomo, he was composing a new nigun. The nigun, I'm not sure if he was actually composing it on the spot or he'd composed it a little bit before, but there's that song, I'll try anyway. Oy gesnachu bemalchus tamon meshakos bekoleyone gesnachu bemalchus tamon meshakos bekoleyone ay 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 And the nigun was so beautiful. I loved it. It, like I said, it entered my body and soul, and the dancing was wonderful. And the wedding went on and on. All these chidushim that I'd never heard before. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And also that it was that same Naaman that I'd met outside the House of Love and Prayer. It seemed very, you know, fate. Anyway, so fast speed. We were then there for, actually we were there for Sukkot, the same Sukkot that Neila just mentioned. But we were there, and I remember taking a walk. We actually met Neila that day, and we took a walk with her down, the house was on 10th and Judah, around that neighborhood. And then I'd been there one other time, Tisha B'Av, right. And we met a lot of the Chevra there and became a little bit close. They would come visit us up in Albion even. We would sit around the fire, learn Rebbe Nachman and give over some Divrei Torah. Anyway, fast forward from my introduction to Shlomo, Shlomo advised me to go to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, which I did. We packed up our whole lives and moved to Eretz Yisrael. And I learned in diaspora yeshiva at a point where that was the only place where a guy like who didn't have a history of learning could just walk in and sit down with the Gemara and learn something, other than at the House of Love and Prayer. Anyway, we were there, and then we moved to the Moshav, as Shlomo advised. And actually, I was in the United States putting a stone on my father's kever when Shlomo passed away. And we were at the shul in New York for the Levaya there, with thousands and thousands of people in the rain, standing on the rooftops, and all the streets all around 79th were completely closed and packed with people. And at the end of the tekes, I went inside the shul. I was speaking to the girls. Neshama and Nadara were inside, and most of the people had left. And I think we were among the very last people there. I walked out of the shul, and who should be standing on the street? Naaman Rosen, the same person who introduced me to the House of Prayer.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Poetry and everything having to do with the House of Love and Prayer. and everything that had to do with Shlomo. And we're eternally thankful that we met such a Rebbe and a friend, deepest friend. And we just bless everybody else that they should find what they need in Shlomo's writings and in his stories. And he has much more to give to all the generations. Thank you so much to all the people who put this together and to all the people participating. We love you all.
Yeshe Koach, Dina and Ben Sion Solomon, thank you so much. Yeshe Koach. The next speaker is Rachel Trugman.
Hey. So in case there's a case of missing identity here, it's I'm listed on my husband's computer of Aryae Trugman. This is me. And when at the time that I came to the House of Love and Prayer in San Francisco. Just a little flashback from the past. It was my first plane flight from Chicago to San Francisco, and I had flowers in my hair, of course. And I arrived in San Francisco not knowing, I thought it was going to be San Francisco, it was actually Oakland. So I wound up on Telegraph Avenue, where I quickly got involved with the university community. I had finished 2 years of college, but my campus was mostly shut down because of anti-war protests, 1968. And so I got involved with the arts and the arty community and Native Californians who took me on all kinds of adventures, and including in these adventures, I went to meet my first spiritual teacher. It was Stephen Gaskin. And he was meeting at the Grace Cathedral in those days, and a packed audience of people, spiritual seekers who wanted to do something deep. And I went on missions looking for light. We went to all the California missions with the stained glass windows. And then we went to the Zen Center. And it was a pivotal moment when bells started ringing at the Zen Center, and there was this long, long hallway, and everybody had been sitting on these very hard cushions for umpteen hours, and my tuchus was completely numb, but I had to get up and walk in Zazen and walk very, very slowly, meditatively down this long hallway to the end of the hallway was a golden Buddha. And everybody was bowing down when the bells were ringing, and I just froze in my place, and I said, wait a minute. I don't think I do this. And I just stood there. I stood there respectfully, but I didn't bow down. And it was something so primal, but I didn't know what to do with that. So later on in one of Stephen Gaskin's class, I met this guy named Michael, and he said, well, you want to go to a commune on Friday night? I said, commune sounds great. If he told me it was a synagogue, I probably wouldn't have gone. But I wind up at this house. I thought it was Victorian. Arya says it was Georgian, whatever. It was an old broken down house. It was a mansion. It was really, but it was very old. And I walk in and Miriam greets me and she gives me a hug. And she says, oh, sweet angel, I've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you. Come in and light the Shabbos candles. And on the mantle in the living room there, which was the shul, there were candles all set up. There were even candles in the bathroom. I thought that was the strangest thing, but there were candles all over the place in the kitchen, and this very soft, welcoming warmth that Miriam gave to me, and just welcoming me. And the Shabbos candles, it's like, wait a minute, this is something familiar. This I do. And so I lit the Shabbos candles with everybody, and Arya was playing, and singing, and Elyah leading the davening, and we were dancing and singing. We didn't break bread until like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was just absolutely spectacular. It was so unexpected, something I wasn't looking for. But it was a little bit too much. I wasn't ready to keep Shabbos, to go, hang out with everybody all, permanently. So I ran off to Mount Tamalpais. Stephen Gaskin was having some kind of a gathering over there, and all these hippies were gathering, and the music and the whole scene. And then Miriam said, well, I just happened by the house one time, just by chance, sort of, I guess, Mina Shemaim. And said, well, Shlomo's coming to town. Why don't you come and go with us to be with Shlomo? And stupidly, I didn't go, and I missed that whole long Sepulveda Boulevard march in the rain that so many of our friends walked all the way across Los Angeles in the pouring down rain. Now I missed that one, but I did get to meet Shlomo at the House of Love and Prayer on Arguello Street. And what happened was Shlomo was about to arrive and everybody was so excited, and the house was decked with flowers and candles everywhere, and people were starting to play music, and I was playing a little tambourine in the foyer. There was a big staircase, and Elyah's kid was bouncing down the stairs, and it was a whole scene. And Shlomo walks in and he walks around to every person, and he greets everyone individually, and he asks, "What's your name?" And for the first time in my life, I introduced myself by my Hebrew name. I knew I was named after my great-grandmother Rachel, who lived in St. Petersburg in the time of the Tsar, because her father was a goldsmith in the palace of the Tsar. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything more about her life and what she was like, if she was religious, if she kept Shabbos, of course, everybody kept Shabbos then, except maybe not. It was the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution when my grandmother escaped. But I knew that I was named after her, so I introduced myself as Rachel for the first time ever. I was Roberta before then. Anyhow, this was like a whole transformation for my personal identity. It was the beginning of a saga that is Ada Yom Hazeh. Like with Dina and Ben Sion, we just jumped into starting this expanded house of love and prayer here on the Moshav. And my husband Avramari and I have stopped counting at 10,000 Shabbos guests that we've had here in our house. And sometimes they would be like under the kitchen table, on mattresses on the floor or on sleeping bags, just because we ran out of beds. And people with tents, on the hill next to our house. And Baruch Hashem, the light of Shabbos, may it continue to burn at Sof Kol HaDorot, to the end of all time. May all the peoples of the world be able to open their eyes and see this great light that is trying to shine through the amazing clouds of separation that we've had. And Baruch Hashem for our dear friends who have organized this gathering, and for all of us who are present now, we continue with Briut Eitana. The letters Eitan are all the letters of the future tense. So may we have Briut Eitana to go into the future with more strength, more light, more spreading Shabbos and Shlomo's beautiful love and kindness and giving and tzedakah and message to the world. Ken Niske.
Thank you so much, Rebbetzin and Rachel. Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful. The next speaker is Eliezer Garner. To give credit, if you like this, if you think this is a good idea, Eliezer gets full credit. It was his idea. Thank you so much. Eliezer?
Okay. I didn't expect that. So if I had a spiritual birth certificate, it would read something like this: place of birth, House of Love and Prayer, 347 Arguello Boulevard. Mother's name, Sarah Imenu. Father's name, Abraham Avinu. Attending physician, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. So this is where I was born spiritually, in the House of Love and Prayer. My name was Sonny when I got there. And by the time I left, it was Eliezer. I'm so glad to see, especially tonight, Reb Alia and Miriam and Aryae Coopersmith here. I have this photo, by the way. I don't know if you can see the photo. I don't know. It was a wedding in the House of Love and Prayer.
Hold it back.
And can you see it?
A little further back.
There's Aryae.
Perfect.
And there's Elyah, as known as
Hold it down.
Alex in those days.
Move it down.
And there is holy, humble me. And I don't even remember the wedding. So anyway, I don't want to go too much into the whole story of how I got there, but it was definitely Aryae who found me on the streets of Haight-Ashbury and sort of took me to Shlomo for the first time. So I'm indebted to him. The beauty of the House of Love and Prayer to me is always it's the memory of something very special, in the sense that I felt that time, I felt it was the great Shabbos. I felt at that time it was the great Shabbos. There was this, there was people there from all places of the earth, it was from all forms of spirituality, all religious paths. There was a girl, I think her name was Carol, who was studying to be a nun. And then there was Shirley, she was into Eastern religion, maybe even Hare Krishna. There was someone mentioned before, another boy, but there was all sorts of people, Jews, non-Jews, and Shlomo was sitting there and he was teaching them all. And everything he said resonated with every one of them. And I don't think you're going to find a teacher like that today. You'll find a teacher who'll speak to Jews and they'll like his Divrei Torah, right? But you're going to speak to people and reach every single person in the world. You're going to really have that kind of openness that you can talk to everyone on where they're at, their level. It's a rarity. It's a very, very rare attribute. Only comes around, who knows, once in a long time. And that was Shlomo. I remember sitting in a circle and Shlomo being in the middle of the living room of the House of Love and Prayer. And he was teaching Reb Nachman's Superior Maisios. And I felt we were on some kind of magical mystery tour. Nobody I don't think really knew what he was talking about, but they did know what he was talking about. On the other hand, he was talking about a blind person who could see and a deaf person who could hear. And he was talking about the seven beggars. And it was all of us. We were the beggars. It was all within us, and we responded to it. The House of Love and Prayer, some people came and some people left, and some people came half religious and left 3/4 religious. Some people became, really, really religious. It wasn't about that. It wasn't really about your level of observance. It was much deeper. I mean, it was much deeper than that. I can't explain it. It's just you have to go into it. You have to think about it. But you see that Shlomo is mamish reaching everybody on it. Every single neshama, and he's reaching everybody. And it's a very rare thing that someone can do that. So I want to say that I think that the takeaways from Reb Shlomo's House of Love and Prayer is that openness, that if we can really be open, you hung around with Shlomo, pardon me. You hung around with Shlomo. The more you hung around with him, you saw how he interacted with everybody in the world. And, there's such a thing that's called Maaseh Rab, You learn from someone the way there's certain things you just don't learn in the text. You just learn by watching the master, seeing how the master responds. And that was, I think, my takeaway from Shlomo and his house. So all I know is we should be open to everybody, and we should really mamish integrate Shlomo's deepest teachings within us on whatever level we're at, on the outside or inside, but just keep remembering who we had as a mentor, someone who reached us on that level. And I want to thank, of course, everybody who put this together, as Sammy and Yaakov and Yehuda Katz and whoever's running this show tonight, the Ephraim Klug. And it's really so good to see old friends again, by the way. It's really nice. It's really lovely. We should do it more often. So Kol Tov, and I love you all. Today's my Hebrew birthday, so happy birthday to me. And we were very fortunate. We were very fortunate. Okay, love you all.
Reb Eliezer, thank you so much. Yeshikoyach, happy birthday, happy birthday. And again, thank you for this beautiful, beautiful idea. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Reb Joe Schonwald.
Okay. Good evening from Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh. First of all, it's so delighted to see Neila with us tonight. God should provide her with long life, good health, and sweet memories to keep her warm. It's also wonderful to see brother Reuven Finman. We haven't been together since we danced at Shlomo and Neila's wedding, going back a few years. So nice to see everybody. The summer of the early 70s was very pivotal in my life. I had returned back from the diaspora yeshiva for a summer, Ben Hazmanim. And our chevre in Los Angeles was Or Hadash, which was acronym Chevrat Dorshei Shalom, Hadash. And we were the community of peace seekers. And we were concerned with a particular statue which adorned the boardroom at the LA Jewish Federation on Wilshire Boulevard. It was symbolic of all the activities that took place in this place, in this building, which had no mezuzot. So one evening, several of us remained in the building after closing time. And our first order of business was to toss out this elaborate statue of Michelangelo's Moses with the horns out the window of the 8th floor, which we proceeded to do, after which we affixed mezuzot on some 240 offices. We worked all night on every door. Needless to say, some of the management arrived very early in the morning and called the police on us. I called up my rabbi, Rabbi Dolgan, Zichrono Livracha, and he called up the president of the federation and said to him, if anything happens to our boys, we're pulling out of the federation. And he hung up. That was Rabbi Dolgan. Rabbi Dolgan wielded big time in Los Angeles. He was an important rabbi. So after this little incident, we made amends with the Federation leadership. They elected me to represent them in finding out what had happened to the 100,000 runaway Jewish kids who had all flocked to San Francisco in the summer of love, when the living was easy. And that's how I made it to the House of Love and Prayer. I think at the time it was on Arguello. And before that, I think a short period of time was in Ian Grant, Alava Shalom's workshop, where we had to use his place several Shabbatot for retreats. Shabbat at the house was like nothing I had ever experienced. It was a day that was altogether Shabbat in a messianic sense. The davening was intense. Sometimes Friday night ended up somewhere, I don't know, 2 a.m., singing and dancing. And it served to nourish us in a way that food could never have done. During that week, Shlomo told me a story which pains me every time I remember it. He had just come back from Russia on a plane and was sitting next to a big Rosh Yeshiva. And this Rosh Yeshiva was taunting Shlomo, saying things like, you scoffer, you kofar. How can you be sitting there without your kippah? So Shlomo proceeds to tell him the following story. He said to him, and he pulls out his tattered siddur to show me. He says to the rabbi, I gave away everything which was holy in Russia. Somebody wanted my tzitzis, I gave my tzitzis. Somebody wanted my tefillin, I reached into my guitar case and gave him my tefillin bag. Somebody wanted my kippah, and it was the last thing I had, and I gave them my kippah. So he says to the Rosh Yeshiva, aren't you ashamed of yourself? No, for God's sake, how can you even think those things of me? So he ran out of what to give, and he started tearing out pages of the Siddur. And when he met Russian Jews, he would give them a page out of the Siddur because he had nothing else to give. He gave away the holy pages of the Siddur. So Shlomo said to me, brother, I wish you will come with me to the Federation leadership. I have a meeting with them next week. And maybe they'll treat me a little bit better than this Rosh Yeshiva. I said to him, how could I not go? Of course. Well, it was not to be. The Federation turned their noses at Shlomo. They were not into outreach to young adults in the Jewish community, hippies. And this is one of the most devastating realizations that Shlomo had. I'm sorry to say, it pained him so much. The realization that they were not really connected. They were not a part of a movement. They were not a part of a synagogue association. And so the house somehow survived from hand to mouth. Maybe there were one or two, or maybe even three people that I remember who could be counted on to come up with some money. And then there was the yearly mail order fundraiser. And this put together a few bucks to keep the house running on a shoestring budget. It brought in some money. I found a letter that Shlomo penned to Jewish parents and children all over the world. And he writes, we don't travel the way our grandparents traveled. We go to the same place, but we travel differently. What they did in the month, we now do in a few hours. We need a yeshiva where we can put our children into a holy jet. They are ready. Have you heard them cry? The earth is full of their cries. Have you heard them pray? Heaven is full with their prayers. Have you seen their shiny eyes? Only the stars can reflect them. So from the late 60s to the late 70s, the House of Love and Prayer was the only Jewish outreach program for young Jews that was an ongoing source of a place where young Jews could come and get turned on to Yiddishkeit. But the establishment shunned that, and they behaved not nicely with Shlomo. And they simply said, we're not interested in Orthodox hippies. And they had a point. So the House of Love and Prayer permeated good vibes and loving atmosphere. And in being open and inclusive, sometimes included some unsavory individuals who were tolerated and somehow were brought in, and they changed. Arya, I'm remembering one particular Friday night when we all got very cross with a particular individual named Charlie, who was an absolute meshugana, drove us all crazy. We have to ask him to step outside so that we can talk to him. So Shlomo went outside with Charlie and he embraced him, and the guy came back. Excuse me, he was like a puppy. Shlomo had totally pacified him, and he kept quiet for the rest of Shabbos. everybody knows that before World War I, Rav Kook lived with Shlomo's grandfather for a short year. So Rabbeinu had a very strong kesher to Rav Kook, and so with Rav Kook's son, Rav Yehuda Kook, who one day, as he was asking about the success of the House of Love and Prayer, said to Shlomo, what is it that turns on these Hippolas? How is it that you're able to reach them in such a deep way? What is it? What is the secret to your success with young Jews like that? And Shlomo said to him, listen, brother, what turns them on the most is I've tried all kinds of chassidut, but what seems to be the biggest attraction are two Rebbes who mamish do root canal into their neshama, Rabbi Nachman, and even more so the Ishvitzer Rebbe. So Tzvi Yehuda says, my father told me like this, everybody knows that Torah is food, and that that Rabbi Nachman and the Ishbitz is like medicine. So Rav Kook says, look, all the Rebbes are on the level of food for the neshama, but Ishbitz and Breslov is like the most penetrating. This is so. All those stoned-out hippies came to the house, and Shlomo starts talking Torah to them, and they fall asleep. He holds up the Mei Shiloach, and they come alive. And that was the secret to how people got turned on. They got turned on through Rabbi Nachman and through the Mei Shiloach. Yasher koach to everyone who took part in bringing us this wonderful offering this evening. God bless you all.
Yesher koach, Reb Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the participants, OL Shlomo, friends and students of Reb Shlomo. Live streams like this allow us to share important dimensions of Reb Shlomo. OL Shlomo is very pleased to announce that we're beginning to develop a collection of Reb Shlomo's minhagim. We welcome your input at ohelshlomo613@gmail.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. Our next speaker is Reb Nosson Schaffer.
Shalom, sweet friends. Thank you, Holy Joe. That was great. Thank you so much, Eliezer, and Aryae and Rachel, and especially thank you, Neila. Thank you so much, Goldfarb. Baruch Hashem. And what a sweet privilege for me and my holy wife, Chana, to be here. This is truly amazing. Truly amazing. I want to get up and dance together. This is a special moment. I'm beginning to get chills, excited, happy chills. What a gift. Thank you to each of you who made this happen and is making this happen. Amazing, amazing. So I met Shlomo when I was about 12 years old. And by the time I was beginning seriously to be a teenager, I was hitchhiking 1,000 miles a few times a year to go to New York and hang out with Shlomo, and he would take me all over the place with him, and we had a wonderful relationship, and it was great, and I loved it. And then came, I guess it was around 1967, and you're going to San Francisco. So I went to San Francisco. And it was exciting and it was great fun. And I'm walking down the street and there's this young woman walking down the street, handing out flyers. And I look and I wait until she comes by me and I take a flyer and it's talking about Shlomo, my Shlomo. Oh, I can't, Shlomo's here. Oh, I gotta go see Shlomo. Where is he? So she told me, where he was, which was, he was staying at a motel somewhere there in San Francisco. And so I went with her and helped her give out the flyers. And then I went to the motel and I walked into a room and the Sukkots were there And I think Eliezer Garner was there. And it was the most amazing moment. Like, whoa. And I instantly fell in love with the Sukkots. Mamish, and became a frequent traveler to their homes out in Marin County, Forest Knolls and the other one. and their amazing hospitality and unbelievable. Yeah, there 40, 50 people could turn up for a Shabbos. I remember one time the Hare Krishna ashram all came, since almost all of them were Jewish anyhow. And they had the holiest Shabbos with the Sukkots. It was so good to be there. And the food was the best food I ever had. I'll tell you why. Because they weren't able to pay the electric bill. So when the candles all burnt out, you couldn't see what you're eating. So all you could go by was just the texture and the flavor. Oh, best way to eat. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Oh. And being with Shlomo at the house and everywhere he went there in San Francisco was so exciting and so real and made me so much open myself up to receive. I wanted so much. And it was coming. There it is. It was just, the openness, and the caring, and the letting the energy flow, and being open to other people, and making good friends instantly, instant good friends. Just add love and water. So amazing. So amazing. And then, right, I came back a few times. I wasn't living in San Francisco, but I came back a whole bunch of times to the Sukkots, to the house, to be there, with amazing people, amazing gifts. And then I went to Yerushalayim. I followed the Sukkots to Yerushalayim. And there was the House of Love and Prayer in Yerushalayim. It was amazing. And some of the same sweet, amazing neshamas were there. Yeah, you remember? Shlomo is so important in my life. Shlomo's the one who put my holy wife and I together. He and Neila, thank you, Neila, introduced us. And we met for the first time in their home. And Shlomo married us in their home. And Neila made the wedding. It was all gift from Hashem. Mamish. And each of you, in your own ways, thank you for being a gift from Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, so much. I see such old friends. Amazing. Yay. Oh, yes. That we're still here in this world, and we get to see each other and sometimes even to be together. May Hashem bless us to be here together and to be together with all the neshamas who need this kesher, who need to be attached.
You're gonna go.
We need to know how much we're attached. Thank you. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Shlomo. Unmute everyone, please. Please sing together. Return again. Return. Return again. Return to each other. Return each of us to our neshama. Mama, mama. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Hashem. Mama, 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 mama.
Reb Nosson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's so sweet to hear you. It's so sweet to see the both of you.
Thank you.
And I know Rena's here, so baruch haba to Rena also. Our next speaker is Yehudit Goldfarb.
Okay. I have a few words. I feel like I was at the second House of Love and Prayer, but I wasn't there very much. I grew up in San Francisco, and a lot of things that people were experiencing in the 60s, that was just the way we were. So I didn't take it as such a big revelation, the openness and the friendliness. And I don't know, just a whole lot of what happened in the 60s. It was just who we were in San Francisco. But by that time I was living in Berkeley, and when the house started, and I knew Zalman from 1961, and I reconnected with him in 1972 at a Shabbat in Berkeley. And some people there, I don't remember if anyone was part of the house, but I know that the next time I was with Zalman for the high holidays in 1973, there were people from some place called this House of Love and Prayer, and they talked of this Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. So I had some sense there was something happening in San Francisco. I wasn't quite sure what it was. They seemed to be a little bit more traditional. They knew more than we knew. I had no background growing up in San Francisco. I wasn't even a member of a shul. And I had Hanukkah and Passover. So Zalman then came back in 1974 and did teachings on Tanya for a whole week. And again, I heard from people from the House of Love and Prayer, and somehow in there between his teaching for a week in February or so until he came out for a whole month in May, Shlomo came to town and I heard about it. And there was a concert in Berkeley. So I went to see who this was. And I saw this rabbi going from person to person and hugging them and saying hello to them and every person in the audience. Then he got on stage and he kept saying, mamish, mamish, this is the deepest of the deep and stuff. And I walked out. I didn't believe it. I didn't feel real. But the people who told me about him, I respected so much. The next day I drove over to San Francisco to a teaching at the House of Love and Prayer. And that's when I became a Hasid. Basically, I liked the teaching very much. That whole atmosphere of studying at a table, there was only about maybe 6 or 7 of us there. It wasn't a big group. And it was personal. It was good. I don't remember the teaching at all, but I just remember the feeling I had. Yes, this is something I want. And so the next time Shlomo came to town was actually at the end of Zalman's month-long workshop where he's an academic. So he was teaching at the college in Santa Cruz and came up to Berkeley part of the week. And we learned Tanya with him several days a week. And then we did Shabbat. And I got hooked on Shabbos. I hadn't really experienced Shabbat before. And the last Shabbos of this month-long workshop with Zalman, Shlomo was in town because they were going to do a Farbrengen together. And the group I was with, which eventually became the Queer Minyan, the next week we gave ourselves a name, like did Shabbos, did Shalosh Shudas, did Havdalah. As soon as Havdalah was over, a group of people went to San Francisco to the House of Love and Prayer. And this experience was, to me, such a lesson. We went right back into Shabbos. I mean, totally into Shabbat. And I realized, oh, it's not a time thing. It's beyond time and it's beyond space. And it lasted for hours and hours before we did Havdalah there. And I don't remember much more than that, except the feeling, oh, you can go in and out of Shabbos because it's not really tied to time and space. And that was kind of like the lesson of the House of Love and Prayer. And I got used to very long services when I went there. I went there very rarely because I lived in Berkeley. And I knew the people there. And I knew they were somehow more traditional. And one night somebody walks into the Aquarium Minion where we had Friday night services primarily at that time. And this man was wearing some strings hanging down from his jeans. And I thought, House of Love and Prayer. And that's how I met my husband. He was one of those from the other side of the bay. And so we've been this partnering of going with Zalman and going with Shlomo. And to me, like Shlomo is the only person I never took notes with. I would just listen to and let it go totally into my heart and soul and do whatever work it needed to do. And it did a lot of work and it kept me alive and it still keeps me alive. I teach Reb Shlomo's teachings from the recordings and from the notes in Evan Shlomo now every week. My students do not let me not teach every year, even though I've done this cycle now about 5 times. And I always find something new. And the biggest thing this week was really this whole teaching he has about what's the specialty of Jews, that we're the people beyond time and space, and that we can be both infinite and finite. The Torah is infinite, but it has infinite amount of finite practical. How do you do it? How do you live? How do you interact? And how do you bring the infinite? How do you bring God and infinity into everyday life, into every piece of our life, and into seeing every person as a person of God, an image of God, and relating to them that way. And I'm eternally grateful. I feel he created a way of us being with each other, that we are always in the House of Love and Prayer, whose ever house we're in, and that we each create that in our own homes. Thank you so much.
Okay. You should mute.
Sorry, thank you so much.
Is somebody saying something?
Unmute. Yehudit Goldfarb.
I am unmuted.
Thank you so much. We hope you're enjoying this program on the House of Love and Prayer, Shul House. Beyond description, awesome. This program was created and sponsored by Oel Shlomo, Reb Sammy Intrader, Rabbi Yaakov Kelman. Welcome your thoughts and suggestions at oelshlomo613@gmail.com. Also, please know if you know people who are connected to the House of Love and Prayer or connected to both Reb Shlomo and Reb Solomon from our previous program, we would love to hear from them. They can continue the conversation by catching us at oelshlomo613@gmail.com. Now, the next speaker is Reuven Goldfarb.
Hi, thank you very much. Are you able to hear me?
Beautifully.
Okay, great. So I took a few notes this afternoon. I'm going to go back and forth between my paper and the screen. And I want to thank everyone who's spoken so far. Very inspiring. Lots of humor. You have to remember that. I was at both the House of Love and Prayer on Arguella Street in the Richmond district and the house on 9th Avenue. And then the house on 9th Avenue in the Sunset District, starting in late 1969 until its dissolution in the mid-70s, really late 70s. I was even a dues-paying member when that method of keeping the franchise going was attempted. I remember the free-form dancing in the days before the mechitza. One particularly frenzied night when the living room was so crowded that people just had to brush against each other and how after one of those passages, a young man wearing the garb of an Orthodox Jew said to me, "Why don't you get married?" I looked at him with pity. He didn't get it. He apparently thought that whatever we were doing was just a prelude to something more appropriate, more Jewish in his eyes. Another time, perhaps only a few weeks later, I overheard two such young men talking to each other about how they would get us to perform certain actions, wear certain articles of clothing, and so on. In other words, become more like them. This did not sit any better with me than the peremptory advice the first young man had given me. In fact, it awakened some suspicion. Robert Frost, in his essay, The Constant Symbol, notes that there is a human tendency to resist and to bristle at the notion that someone has designs on us. I was a graduate school dropout. I had no intention of joining anybody's band, adopt someone else's insignia, or wear their uniform. One reason for the success of the House of Love and Prayer was that Shlomo did not insist that anyone comply with a standard of dress or deportment. It could be fairly said that those young Jews who were drawn to the house and were swept up in its enthusiasm were nonconformists, individuals, each distinct in their own way. Even today, the Shlomo Chabra is recognized by each individual's personal appearance, each one of us being distinctively individual. Even those who wear the levush do so out of a free choice, not out of compulsion. Shlomo said he rarely told anyone what to do, and only did so if pressed. And now I'm going to tell Ben Sion's story for the second time tonight. I can think of one example that I heard from Ben Solomon. According to Ben Sion, when he was ready for a change, he asked Shlomo, "What he should do next?" Shlomo replied, "I don't usually tell anybody what to do, but I think you should move to Yerushalayim and study Gemara." Ben Sion went home to Mendocino and told Dina what the new game plan was. And I think they made a huge success of it. But this was the exception that proves the rule. Shlomo attracted people, but he did not direct people. People took their cues and hints from his behavior, their guidance from his teachings, which were an amalgam of Hasidic wisdom and traditional rabbinic sources. Each person went on from there. Often it involved uprooting oneself and settling in Israel. The yeshivas that existed then did not meet with Shlomo's full approval. But he sent many of his followers, or rather people inspired by him, to the diaspora yeshiva to study under Rabbi Goldstein. As for Shlomo himself, his humility could be shown by this episode I recall from the house on 9th Avenue. Asked about his eminence in the world, for at that time there was quite a competition among spiritual leaders from different lineages, and how he compared himself to teachers of the past or present. He spontaneously said, "Sometimes I think I'm like the Baal Shem Tov. Other times I think I'm the biggest schlepper in the world." There were no simple answers from Shlomo. He didn't ask us to fulfill our potential. He asked us to go beyond our potential. He didn't like the term outreach, and he didn't think of himself as the leader of the Tshuva movement. He didn't favor thinking of the spiritual awakening of which he was a part as a movement at all. As everyone here knows, Tshuva is a very personal transformation, perhaps aided and abetted by existing institutions, but essentially personal in scope and motivation. My wife and I call ourselves observant renewal. We haven't lost touch with our roots. I don't know whether or not that designation and the lifestyle that flows from it would be approved by the recruiters who visited the House of Love and Prayer in 1970 in San Francisco. But it suits us in Tzfat contemporary, it suits us in 21st century Tzfat. That's my offer. Questions, comments? Thank you all.
Reb Reuven, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. The next person who's speaking is Elyah Sukkot. Elyah?
Got it.
When we first heard Shlomo, when we first met Shlomo, it was like it was something else entirely. It's like so many of us have explained here now. You can't really explain it in words. I think maybe Eliezer Garner, when he spoke about how it's like the movements and the expression on the face and the soul that's shining out of the eyes and out of the soul, that it was like, you know, after many years of learning, there's such a thing which is called, from the Aryae Kadosh, from the Holy Ari, it's called the Ibur Neshama. Ibur Neshama means that if a person is open and he allows himself, so the neshama of a tzaddik can just jump right inside of you, if you allow it to. And this is what Shlomo did for us. He mamish jumped inside of us, and we became part of him. And so it was like every word that Shlomo was saying and every song, it was like we just couldn't get enough. It's a very interesting, you know, when we first were introduced to Shlomo through a good friend. It was called Ayin Grant. May his memory be for a blessing. And Ayin, I never realized what his name was. One time I was singing the song, one of Shlomo's songs, and all of a sudden I realized who Ayin was. The Shlomo song was, Ayin really came out of all our hope that we were waiting for, because they say that your person should michabed, he should honor his Rebbe, his teacher, even more than his parents. You have to honor your parents with all your heart and soul. But your Rebbe, he brought you into the real world. Shlomo brought us into the spiritual world, which is it's just been shining ever since then for the last how many years? 56 years. It was just it's not even to be believed. He brought us into the world of the Baal Shem Tov. He brought us Rabbi Nachman. The Rebbe Shlomo used to say, the Heilige Reb Nachman of Breslev. I remember the first time I ever saw the Kutei Moran. The story, the sefer was like, I could even remember the smell. It was from the old Ktav Rashi, and the first Torah that we learned from Shlomo and Kutei Moran was Anior Balayla. It's a Mishnah, but the way Rabbi Nachman is explaining the Mishnah, it's almost the opposite of what the normal way the Mishnah is. A person who's awake at night, and he goes on a way alone, and he turns his heart to nothingness. Then he's responsible to die. He should be killed for this. It's a crazy thing. But Rabbi Nachman says, go out at night, get up at Chatzot, Go out into the forest, into the fields, into the forest, and empty your heart from all other thoughts and just only think about God. This person is really alive. We heard this Torah from Shlomo. This was before the House of Love and Prayer, and we decided gotta go. We moved to Marin County. We lived in this little shack, a little house, a very small little house with a wood burning stove, and it was right on the edge of the sequoia forest of the giant redwood trees. And every day we would go out into the fields. We had a stream behind our house, and talk to Hashem. And then Shlomo would come. He would come back to San Francisco, and it was like he was giving us, pumping us life into us, pumping the heart of the Yiddishkeit into us. Every story became like real. It became alive. We weren't even living in the same world anymore. San Francisco turned into Yerushalayim until it ended up turning into Yerushalayim. How can we explain such a thing? And then when we decided that in the beginning, when we first knew Shlomo, he was talking a lot about the Holocaust. He was talking about the Heilige Shesh Milyonim. We have no idea how holy these people were. And then he told us about the story of Matis Gelman. I can't tell the whole story because it would take up too much time. But the story of Matis Gelman, he was a completely secular Jew going to a Goyish school in Vienna. And all of a sudden, it was like in the 1930s, all of a sudden after he was a top football player, the top basketball player in the whole school. All of a sudden, he's leaving the school, and they made shurot, 2 lines like they do, like and there's a levaya. They made 2 lines, his classmates, and they started cursing him. I won't even say which kind of curses, and he was so shocked. He didn't know what was going on. He started crying, and he said, I heard there's some part of Vienna where those old-fashioned Jews that live, maybe they know the answer. And he went there. He went onto the streets, and he sees a beautiful carriage with a horse and carriage, and he looks up, and there's a Jewish king. The Jewish king was Reb Meir Shapiro. He looked up at him and he said, "This is it." And he started crying. Meir Shapiro says, "Come up onto the wagon." He got up onto the wagon, and Meir Shapiro puts his arm around him, and he says, "I want you to come learn in my yeshiva." How could that be? This yeshiva you have to learn at least 100 daf of Gemara Baal Peh in order to go into the yeshiva. And this boy didn't know anything. But within a few months, he became one of the top students. And after this, he was the leader of the underground of the Jews they called Elyah Sukkot, those who never surrendered to anybody. They kept, even in the bunkers in Poland, in the middle of the Nazi occupation, they kept learning Gemara and singing and playing with melody and guitars and tambourines, and they never changed it with long payas and these were the stories that we heard from Shlomo, and they so inspired us that we said, yeah, we turned into it. So. Then we came to we decided then the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War, Shlomo came to Eretz Yisrael towards the end of the 6-Day War, when they were the first plane that was able to come into Eretz Yisrael. And Shlomo came back after that to San Francisco, and his beautiful black beard turned into like 3/4 already a white beard. He's heard so many stories, so many miracle stories from the holy soldiers and the holy people that were in the middle of the war here, and such miracles that happened. All of a sudden, we had back the Kotel, we had back Keber Rachel, we had back Marsa Machpelah, all the holy places. It was not even believable. It was filled with such stories about Eretz Yisrael that we just, every story that Shlomo told, it went right into our hearts. And then we decided we've got to come to Eretz Yisrael. So we packed up our suitcase. We gave up everything that we had else. We gave away, and we started going. We went to my parents' house in New Jersey, and we started applying. Where are you going in Israel? So you go to a religious kibbutz. That's what we thought. So we went to the Jewish agency. They led us around in circles and circles. It was like hakafot. We go to this office and that office, and we didn't know what to do. A few weeks went by, and then it was almost Pesach. And amazingly enough, this year was the first year right after Shlomo's father, Reb Naftali Zichrono Livracha, was niftar. And it was the first Pesach that Shlomo was making alone with his mother in his house in New York. And Shlomo invited myself and my wife Miriam and our young son Noah, who's now Menachem, invited us to come to be with us for the Pesach Seder. Such Yirat Shemayim, such Ahava, such Or, impossible to describe. And after Pesach, Chol HaMoed, we got a call from Shlomo. And Shlomo said, you know what? Alex, so that's you call him Alex, is really Alexander the Great. That wasn't really so great, but it was a very common name in those days. So he said, Alex, so Miriam, Arya and Josh, they found a house in San Francisco.
And if you go now to if you go now there,
if you go now there, it's just so they're going to cut your wings off. They're going to become. We want your wings to grow strong. So if you come back now to San Francisco and help lead the house together with Arya, and lead the house for me. It's a place that I'm coming whenever I can, but you have to help keep it going. And if you'll do that, it'll be your mafteach, it'll be your key to be able to come to Eretz Yisrael. Stay there for a year. So we went back, and the house was incredible. It was whatever it was, Victorian or Georgian. I really don't know have any idea, but it was sure beautiful and big. We had a big room, and our little boy at the time, Menachem, he had a walk-in closet that was we had no furniture, so we had mattresses on the floor. But the Shabbos is there in the house. We just made it up. I remember that once it was Arab Sukkot, and Sukkot, Shlomo called us and he said, "Listen, for Chol HaMoed Sukkot, I'm coming to San Francisco, and I'm going to need a sukkah that's going to be big enough for 500 people." Says you and Arya can do it. Go build me a sukkah. So I looked at Arya afterwards and I said, I never built a sukkah in my life. I'm going to build a sukkah for 500 people. And Arya started thinking we're going to plan it. He's going to write it out and the whole thing. But I said, Arya, let's just take the van. We had a Volkswagen van. Take it to Sequoia forest, to the redwood forest. There's a lot of small redwood trees. Let's cut down as many as we can, get a lot of branches, and we'll build it. So we built the sukkah. It was with all the hidurim of the Chazon Ish, but we didn't even know what the Chazon Ish was. It was because everything was tied together, no nails. We made this giant sukkah in the whole backyard. And sure enough, Shlomo came Chol HaMoed, and on that Chol HaMoed, there really were 500 people. Shlomo sang the song, and as usual, I didn't even know Hebrew b'chlal, but I learned the words just by imitating what Shlomo was saying. He sang the song. Later, I understood that it was a Chabad nigun, but it goes like this. The Mishnah from the Mishnah from Sukkot. Mishnah Sukkah. Elu ve'elu omrim Ashreini shelo chodot Ashrei Shlomo explained, it's a Mishnah, it says about the dancing. There were 3 dances that were done in the Beis Hamikdash. One was a dance of all the tzaddikim, perfect tzaddikim. And Shlomo said, who would get up to be in the dance of the perfect tzaddikim? If a person really thought that he was a perfect tzaddik, so then he would for sure not get up because it would be gaiva. Why should he get up? So the people who really knew they're not perfect tzaddikim, but it'll be a chilul Hashem if there isn't people that will dance in the Beis Hamikdash. So they got up. And then it says, then there was a dance of the Balichuvas. But who could say he's a Bal Tshuva? So who could say that he really turned back to Hashem? So who got up? The people, I know I'm not really a Bal Tshuva, I didn't even begin yet, but it has to be a dance in the Beis Hamikdash. So those are the people that got up. And then those 2 groups came together and they made the 3rd group, which was everybody together and they all danced together, the perfect tzaddikim, the Balichuvas, and these were really the perfect tzaddikim. These were the hidden tzaddikim. And this is what Shlomo breathed into our beings, the Ibur Neshama, that we should continue on this incredible work. And that was this. I remember that Shlomo had a bed in the sukkah. It started raining. Now Shlomo told us
all the mattresses from the house.
Yeah, all the mattresses in the house was maybe about 20 mattresses. It was like a big high bed, like and other mattresses. And it was raining, so Shlomo wore a raincoat because in New York it was.
Not want to leave the sukkah.
No, because it says if a person is mitztayer, then he's patur from the mitzvah of sukkah. But what does it mean mitztayer? So the chassidim, they were so mitztayer not to be in the sukkah. That it was a simcha for them to be if you were in the snow and the rain. The Shlomo says they made this bed, and we were all singing in the drizzling. It wasn't such a strong rain, but it was raining. So there's a song that Shlomo sang that in a lot of Chassidus. They sing this in different melodies right at the end of Rosh Hashanah, and they sing like this. The words are brothers, sisters, when will we meet again? Brothers, sisters, when will we Hashem will get us health and life and
Thank you so much. Elyah, the Sukkos, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. This is, I'm blown away over here. So thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ilana Friedman.
Okay. Hi. Thank you so much, everybody. I just can't believe it. What a reunion. So I was one of the young things. I think I was about 16 at the old House of Love and Prayer. And I walked in the Seder before Elyah and Miriam left for Jerusalem. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know. I came from a Jewish family, but I didn't know that Passover happens in the spring. I didn't know who Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov were. I knew nothing. But I knew that something I was looking for was there. And I just want to tell a couple things. It's like looking back on it, I see things about Shlomo that I didn't understand there. And I remember certain things he said. Like he himself had no idea what he was doing. He knew it was necessary, but he didn't really understand how to do it. He was like learning on the job. So I remember him saying he was trying all sorts of different things, learning to see like what would grab people. And he learned Chabad with us. He learned Maharal with us. He learned naturally lots and lots of Breslov with us. And he learned Ishbitz with us. I'd never heard of any of these things. Most of the people there hadn't heard any of these things. And he just saw, one time he tried Musar, learning Musar with us. That was like not the most successful thing in the world. And he just watched what reached people. And I remember also him saying that he knew he was getting somewhere when some of the books he brought were stolen, because he said when he first came, nobody knew an aleph from a bet. Nobody would know what to do with the books, so nobody ever took them. And he would take us, he would put us in that van that still belonged to the house, and we'll go to every cult in San Francisco. And these things called Holy Man Jams, where all of the leaders of all the cults and all these gurus and all these different people would come and kind of like present their way of being in the world. And Shlomo would get up and start singing, and he would get everybody connected, and which was really what he was there for, because he knew that most of the people there were Jews. And I just remember going to all kinds of places with him. I had no idea. He would just put us all in the bus, and off we would go. And I just want to say also that there probably isn't a corner of my life that isn't in my life because of being in the House of Love and Prayer. So, but anyway, it was in 1969, nobody had the word Balichuvas. No one had anything. Like I remember later in 70 or 71, like the first advertisement came up for people who wanted to contribute to the Jewish catalog. Like the whole idea of starting some kind of movement hadn't started. Chabad didn't have Chabad houses, nothing. And we didn't know, we knew we were starting something, but we didn't know what it was called. And I remember one time I was at the house, and there was a postcard from Elyah Sukkot from Jerusalem, and to Aryae, but Aryae had put it on the bulletin board. And he said, I don't know about this idea of calling us ourselves Balei Tshuva. You know, in Israel, they take that phrase very seriously. And he says, I don't think we really should take on such a serious phrase for ourselves. We're not on the level. Maybe we should call ourselves the Mad Hatters. And that made much more sense after I came to Israel and I saw like how exactly everybody is broken up into white hats and black hats and gray hats and these hats and those hats. Like I really understood what Mad Hatters we were, and I still consider myself a Mad Hatter. Let's see what else. I also want to say that when I was there, mostly Aryae Coopersmith was teaching, and I remember that the working of the house, the fact that there was any money, the fact that there was anything was ever fixed, every bit of organization was basically half from Aryae Coopersmith. And I remember slowly understanding over the years, like what a black hole of organization Shlomo was. Like, not only could he never go anywhere on time and he couldn't keep track of his money, and he was like a black hole in logistics, but like a black hole, anything that got near to him just got sucked into the vacuum. So the fact that Aryae Coopersmith could keep the house going for so long, like I remember thinking, looking back, like that was a miracle. Like, how did he do that? And I remember when the first night I walked into the house and being like hugged at the door, like welcome Shabbos, Angel. I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know it was the second night of Pesach. I didn't know anything, but I was brought to light candles, and I'm not sure, but I think it was Nosson Schaffer's homemade colored candles. I never forgot those colored candles, and I'm still always keeping my eye open for colored Shabbos candles. Let's see what else. And I also remember like Shlomo's ability to translate Torah for people who didn't know anything, so that we could totally embrace it. Like none of us knew we didn't know anything when we were listening to him. And he would just like take us up on his, back up to places in heaven, up to places up to like into the Hasidic stories, like we were with the Baal Shem Tov. But at the same time, for him, it was completely strange what he was doing. I remember one time going to him when he was staying in a hotel and saying, Shlomo, give me a blessing. I just knew it because there were all these stories, like your Rebbe gives you a blessing. And he couldn't stand the idea. He hadn't like grown into the fact that people were seeing him as a Rebbe. And he reacted as if I had asked him, I like to climb out Mount Everest without oxygen or something like that. He couldn't bear the idea. Later, years and years later, he knew how to give a blessing, but at that time he just felt it wasn't his place. But he learned. He was at the house of prayer. He was learning, just like we were learning. And I think I've used up my 5 minutes, thank God. So thank you everyone for coming and talking. It's been an amazing evening for me, and thank you.
Yeshivat, Ilana, that was beautiful. Thank you so, so much. Our next speaker is Yankele Shemesh.
Hi, Shalom, Father. Good to be here with everybody. And wow. Basically, after Woodstock, I made my way out to California, and I was living in California in a commune with a group of actors doing living theater. And at the time I had been really searching for my way spiritually, and I had studied all of the world's religions, and I felt there was a lot of wisdom everywhere, but I didn't quite feel at home anywhere. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I was really looking for my guru at the time. And in any case, I was living in the commune, and while I was in the commune, I had a dream. And in this dream, I met my guru, and he was standing in front of a wall of books, and he was talking. And I had this dream 3 times in a row, like in living color, like a movie. And kind of forgot about it. And I used to go every morning to meditate in the yoga ashram for 1:00, and then I would do hatha yoga, and then I'd go to the Zen temple and would make my rounds of all the different traditions. But one morning I was sitting in the commune, and I was meditating. And all of a sudden during the meditation, I thought of tefillin. And I thought of the heart center and the third eye. And I thought, here I am, I'm practicing, looking through every religion, but I didn't really check out Judaism. Because the truth was, when I was growing up, I didn't see there was anything so much there. So I decided, and I would go out and look for a synagogue so that I could put on tefillin. And I was wearing a long jalabia, like a Moroccan robe, and I had 3 sets of beads on. And I had barefooted and a flower in one hand and incense in the other. And I'm wandering through the streets of San Francisco looking for a synagogue. So I came to a conservative synagogue, and I knocked on the door, and the rabbi opens the door, and he's standing there in a suit and a tie, and he sees me there standing there, mamash, this hippie with flower in one hand and incense and beads. And he looked at me and he says, "We don't talk to hippies." And he slammed the door. I said to him, "It's okay, brother, I love you anyway." And I kept on walking, looking for a synagogue. Finally, I don't know how I did it, but I made my way to the Reform synagogue. And the truth is, I came there and I told the rabbi, I'm looking to put on tefillin. And the rabbi was actually very sweet. But he said to me, "I wish I could help you, but here we don't put on tefillin." Probably things have changed since then, but in those days. So then I didn't know what to do. And I'm walking around and I'm looking for a synagogue. And I see 3 holy hippie sisters standing on the street corner. And I said to them, "Hey, sisters, can you help me? I'm looking for a synagogue. Do you know of one in the area?" So one of them says to me, "Well, brother, if you go around the corner, you'll see a big building with a Jewish star on it. Maybe that's what you're looking for." So I walk around the corner, and sure enough, I see a big building with a Jewish star, and it's the San Francisco Chevra Kadisha, the Jewish funeral parlor. And I go inside and I ask the proprietor there, I said to him, "I'm looking to put on tefillin, can you help me?" And he says to me, "Well, I don't have my tefillin here, so I really can't help you." But he said, "Here's $1 and go to this place. It's called the House of Love and Prayer on Arguello. And you'll find other hippies like yourself, so they'll help you." So I made my way to the House of Love and Prayer on Arguello Boulevard. And I knock on the door, and a hippie opens the door. He's got mama's afro, and he's standing there in jeans, barefooted, and he has tzitzis on and a kippah. And was my beloved friend, Tzadik Libracha, Mordechai Levi, who later was one of the founders of it in the Moshav. And Mordechai says, "Come in." And he asked me my name. I knew my Hebrew name. I said, "My name's Yaakov." He took me into the prayer room, and there were pillows all over. And I think I remember some little flower pots around, and a beautiful macrame parochet in front of the Aron Kodesh. And he opened up the Aron Kodesh where the Torah was kept. And he took out a pair of tefillin, and he showed me how to put it on. And we said together, Shema Yisrael. And the 2 of us were mamash crying like babies. And he said to me, "Welcome home, brother." And I said, "It's so good to be home." So then every day I would wake up 4 in the morning, and I would go to the ashram and meditate, and then the Zen Center and the Krishna temple. I would make my rounds everywhere. And then I would go to the House of Love and Prayer very quietly, just I didn't hardly talk to anybody. And I would just go in the prayer room, open the Aron Kodesh, take out the film and put it on, say Kriya Shema, and leave. Anyway, one day I was at the house and I saw a sign, and it said, our holy master and teacher, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, is giving a teaching from July 6th to 16th. I think it was 69, I don't remember, 69, 70. You know, those days, you know, who remembers time, you know? And it was in another 2 weeks. So I decided I'm gonna come and I'll be there for that. And the day came when Shlomo was supposed to be there. In the morning, there was a big yoga festival down by the ocean. And then I made my way to the House of Love and Prayer. And I was the first one there. I got there early, and I'm sitting upstairs in the prayer room in the library on the second floor. And all of a sudden I hear big commotion downstairs. Shlomo's here, Shlomo's here. And I walked down, and the house had these huge staircases, and then a landing, and then another staircase down to the first floor. And I'm walking down, and I'm standing on the landing between the first and the second floor, and I look down, and Shlomo's at the bottom of the steps, and he's got 2 hippies in one hand and 2 hippies in the other, and he's hugging everyone and giving everyone kisses. And he sees me coming down the stairs, and I'm dressed in my Moroccan robe and my 3 sets of beads and little beard, long hair. And I walk halfway down the steps, and Shlomo walks halfway up, and he meets me in the middle, and he gives me a big hug. And he says to me, "Brother, what's your name, brother?" So I said, "My name's Yaakov." He said, "Ah, Yankele, brother, I've been waiting for you." He said, "Where you going, brother?" I said, "I'm going home." He said, "Where's home?" I said, "Wherever God is." He said, "Ah, that's my holy man." He said, "Listen, brother, we're going to be learning at 2:00 upstairs in the library. You have to be there." And then he saw another hippie, and he went off to him. I walked outside, and I was shaking like a leaf. And I thought to myself, you know, I thought I'm a hippie. I know what love is, you know. I said, I never felt so much love in my whole life. I never felt that anyone cared about me the way this person did. It was unbelievable. But it was still early, it wasn't 2:00 yet. So I went to a hippie restaurant, hippie cafe, and stayed there for a while. And I came back at 2:00, went up to the prayer room, and I'm still the first one there. Anyway, little by little, the room fills up. Hippies are coming from all over, right? From San Francisco. And the room packed with people, Mama, you couldn't move, right? And it was so colorful, Mama. It looked like Purim, Mama, you know, I have to say, Mama, the highest. It was so beautiful. And I felt so at home, you know. And the last one to come is Shlomo. And somehow he made his way through this crowded room, and he's giving everybody a kiss and everybody a hug. And then he goes and he's standing to begin his teaching. He's standing in front of a wall of books. And it was my dream that I had in the commune weeks earlier. He's standing in front of a wall of books and teaching. And I knew this is my guru. This is my Rebbe. I didn't know that he was a Rebbe, but come out. I knew this is my Holy Soul Master. Anyway, after that was over, Shlomo says to me, brother, we're going to a concert. You have to come. So he gave me his guitar to hold, and we went off to a monastery where they were teaching young men to become priests. And Shlomo gave a concert there. And it was the most amazing thing. You know, I think maybe, I don't know how much percentage were Jewish, maybe let's say 40%. I'm not sure, but a lot. And how did you know who was Jewish, you know? Everybody who was crying was Jewish. And so many people were crying. You know? Somehow Shlomo knew Mama's just how to touch that place inside of everybody. That Gvalt. It's so precious to be a Jew. So good. Anyway, so I stayed in the house. That was 10 days that he was teaching. During those 10 days, I remember my good friend, Yaakov Rautenberg, and brother Jake Rachmana, now he calls himself, from the Moshav. He was getting married to his first wife. And I remember the chuppah, mamash. I remember how everybody was dancing through the streets. Mamash, with the chuppah. I was just so blown away. I said, wow, I never saw anything like this. Felt so good, mamash. Felt so good that I found my place, you know, I found my way. And after that, there was a big Holy Man Jamboree on the campus of Boulder, Colorado. And all the hippies were there, and Steve Gaskin and all the chevra, who I was close to, and Ramdas, and I'm so many chevra, you know. And Shlomo came, and he started playing music there and telling stories, and it was so beautiful. I mean, he just brought everyone together in the deepest way, and everyone was standing in a circle and singing Shalom, 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 Shalom. After the festival was over, I didn't know what to do. And here I am now, I'm in San Francisco, I'm in the campus of Boulder, Colorado. And anyway, somehow I was praying to God, please tell me where I should go. And decide the first car that I get into, when I'm taking a hitch out of here, whatever direction he's going, that's where I'm going. So I got my first hitch and was on the way back towards the East Coast. So I decided, okay, I'm going back to New York to see Shlomo. So I go back to New York, and I hadn't seen my parents in a few years. And my father very much wanted me, you know, was a little disappointed. Here I am, a hippie. He wanted me, mamish, to be some kind of professional. But I came home, mamish, and I was trying to daven Ma'ariv in the house there. And I had, by that time, I had tzitzis on and a little kippah with my jeans, you know, and my beads. And my father was like, he said, okay, this is not so bad, you know. And maybe he's not going to be a lawyer doctor, but a rabbi is not so bad. Anyway, so we went up to see Shlomo. It was actually Shabbos. It was before I was keeping Shabbos, and we drove up to Manhattan on Shabbos to see Shlomo. And I was standing at the back of the shul, and after the davening, you know, and Shlomo was singing. It was so beautiful, mamash. And he came outside and he saw me standing there with my father. And he comes up to my father and he says to my father, it was Shabbos, he says, Yankele has to come with me to Israel. There's no other way. He says, I'll take out a checkbook right now and I'll write him a check. It was Shabbos, you know. I'm sure he thought it was Bekuach Nefesh. But then my father said, no, don't worry. We'll find him a ticket. Thank God my father brought me a one-way ticket to Israel. And I had to meet with Shlomo. We made up to meet in Rome. And Friday morning, it was the beginning of July. I think it was July 14th, something like that. And we made up to meet in Rome. Now, I didn't know if Shlomo was going to be there, and Shlomo didn't know if I was going to be there. And Shlomo used to tell the story. He was looking for me, and I'm looking for him. And he had been traveling from wherever he was to Rome. He was sitting next to a so-called great rabbi, Shlomo said. And when we had stopped in Rome, so this rabbi says to Shlomo, "Ay, Gewalt, it's the end of the world. Can you imagine? There's a little hippie sitting here with tzitzis and a kippah on and a ukulele. He says, it's the end of the world." Shlomo says, I knew it's my man Yankele waiting for me. So we met up and we flew to Israel together. And we spent that Shabbos together. And then there was a big wedding, mamash, at King David's tomb. And Baruch Hashem, I basically, since then, I've been all these years, 50 years, I'm living in Israel. And had the privilege to be one of the founders of the Moshav. And to be with Shlomo so many years. And to be so close to him. And take care of him a little bit in the Moshav. You know, I had the privilege to be one of Shlomo's shamashim. And not that I was the only one, you know. I remember Shlomo told me, you know, the Holy Sons, or someone came to the Sons and said, Rebbe, can I be your shamas? So the Holy Sons says to him, the truth is I already have 6 shamases. I can't afford to take care of anymore. So Baruch Hashem, I had the privilege of being one of his shamases. Everywhere he went, he had a little shamas. Everybody had a chance some way to be close to him. But Baruch Hashem, I had such a precious time being with Shlomo and the Moshav all those years.
Reb Yankele, thank you so much. This is so beautiful.
It's good to be with you. I'd love to mention names, but I love everybody so much. I don't want to leave anybody out. So please know all my deepest friends, I love you all the most. And I'm blessing you. My heart's with you. And Mamish, we're going to see great things so soon. Mashiach's coming. And Beis HaMikdash and all the good things. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Yankele Shemesh, thank you so much. Our next guest is, I think, Lilian Ritchie or Joshua Ritchie, one of the two. Welcome, both of you.
You know, over these years, I have felt so privileged, so honored to be part of this family of Shlomo devotees, people whose souls were touched and deeply, deeply touched by Shlomo's presence, message, mission, and great love. And it's amazing how close we are together, even though we are so different in personalities and background. But there is something connecting us together. We are like a very close-knit family. And even though, you know, we have certain things that don't correspond very well to each other, but the soul connection, the heart connection is immense, so deep. And it's such a privilege. I feel so honored to be part of this family. It's a heavenly family. We could easily imagine ourselves dancing together in Gan Eden, because that's probably what will happen anyway, not so long from now. I see that most of us have grown very much older. And it's such an honor to be part of this great family. The heart connection with Hashem is so intensified when we get together as as friends of Torah, friends of Shlomo, friends of each other. We are so privileged in this lifetime to be so close together, to all those years to be revived and renewed on so many occasions, especially on the times when we would hear Shlomo was coming. Shlomo is coming. Everybody was so excited and getting themselves ready. Now, let me tell you a cute story. You know, Shlomo was raised in Vienna, and by the time he was 6 years old, his father had to leave the area for some important business, and he was left alone, and he was 6 years old. The phone rang, and Shlomo decided to answer to be his father's helper. So who was on that phone? The Archbishop of Vienna. And what did Shlomo do? He had a very important, serious discussion with the Archbishop of Vienna. And this is the first non-Jewish person that Shlomo bekareved as a 6-year-old. Later on, the Archbishop called Shlomo's father and told him he was so glad to speak with him. He learned so much. They had a long conversation, and Shlomo answered all his questions. That he was bekareved by Shlomo. So that was Shlomo's first victory. Of course, he wasn't dreaming of being a teacher for many years afterwards. But when after the war, he realized that the Jewish youth in the United States was abandoned, was not able to reconnect with the traditional Judaism because it felt lost. You know, it felt like there was no hope, no vision, no reason to be. So that's when Shlomo decided to reach out to all those young Jewish souls by any means, by any way. And he did. Whichever way he could reach out to them, he was right there for them with so much love that it was irresistible. It was really such an immensely moving experience just to be with him. Even if we couldn't quite always understand what he was saying. Joshua and I, my husband and I, didn't have any contact with any Jewish tradition because it didn't exist in San Francisco many years ago, 65 years ago. There was no way we could be drawn toward Yiddishkeit. It was lost. And so we were wondering and searching and questioning and couldn't find even books translated into English. But one day, Nadine Foreman, a good friend, invited us to an engagement party. And it happened to be on the tallest floor of a skyscraper on the tallest hill in San Francisco. It was the place closest to the sky. It was a multimillionaire's home. And it was an open area a penthouse open to the sky. And there was about 100 people there. We had no idea what to expect. But everybody was sitting on the floor. And then Shlomo came. And he started singing. And immediately we were enchanted. We were drawn. And we noticed that as he was singing, he glimpsed at us. He was looking at us. I was wondering why. At the end of the concert, everybody wanted to say hello to him. So did we. And he wouldn't let go of us. He was totally engaged in meeting us. And after that, we were his followers, we were his friends, we were his. He knew right away who we were. And I was just converting her, was a giret. And I had no books to read. So Shlomo was the very first person to connect me to Yiddishkeit. And I had one book of Avraham Heschel, The Earth is the Lord's. I had this book with me all the time. I drank its words 3 or 4 times. I had it under my pillow at night. And then I had a Siddur. The Siddur was absolutely enchanting. And when I read, the first time I read the Ahavta, את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבביך, בכל נפשך, בכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום, על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך ובכתך, ובלכתך בדרך. המשכתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטטפות בין עיניך. When I read this prayer for the first time, I said, this is me. This is what I have been saying in my prayers all the time. It was just repeating my own prayers that I had been repeating for years. And I was rediscovering this awesome, awesome message, the essence of Judaism. And of course, after that, we were following Shlomo, we were greeting him in our home every time he came to Los Angeles. And he was like a Ben Bais. He belonged in our home. And years later, people I never met before would address me and say, 30 years ago, I came to your home and it transformed my life. And I did tshuva. So there's many more things to say. Elyah and Miriam were our best, most friends, most beloved friends. And they drove us to the world of Torah and Shuvah. And we were so honored and so blessed to be part of the hippies. For a while, I also dressed like a hippie. And it was, it was so remarkable because Joshua was a doctor by that time. And it didn't disturb him. He grew a beard and we were fortunate to become close to the Amshanavi Rebbe in Jerusalem. We moved to Jerusalem. Shlomo sent us to meet the Amshanavi Rebbe, and it transformed Joshua's life completely. So much more to say, but I know there's many people waiting to tell their stories. But we would certainly not be here connected to a wonderful family of holy hippies and doctors and and the whole range of people, because this is beyond definition. Soul connection with Hashem is beyond any fashion or any profession or any ways of thinking. It's way above all this. And we're so fortunate to have been part of it and to create the Moshav. It was a great privilege to have Am Shonel Rebbe influence the political scene of these times to allow the Moshav to be created.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Rebbe and Lilian, thank you so much. Awesome, beautiful. Does your holy husband, Dr. Joshua, want to speak?
Yes.
I do.
Yes, thank you.
Just want to thank everybody for the wonderful friendship and connection we have through Shlomo. It's a force that I think gives us life every moment, that we feel so influenced, so connected, so uplifted. You know, I was thinking of myself as a Balichuva even before the term Balichuva, because I was searching way back in the days, and I was just beginning to study medicine in medical school. Same time I was searching for God. And we were so fortunate to meet Shlomo in the Hebra and to be able to grow through Shlomo's wonderful influence, teaching. So it's such a major, important part of our life. Such a blessing. Such a tremendous influence. Very immensely grateful, and grateful to all the good friends that we've met through Shlomo. They're certainly the deepest, strongest friendships we have are all through our connection with Shlomo, and lasting friendships that date back decades. So we can't say enough of appreciation for the blessing and the hashgacha pratis that brought us to be so close to Shlomo and all the chevra. And just hope that we continue to be able to share like now we are doing, and find times and occasions to celebrate all sorts of good news. We should have Soros Tovos always to share with each other. And we should continue to learn and grow and feel as grateful as we feel. So I just want to bless you all that we continue to grow in our love and friendship and joyful experiencing of Torah and Yiddishkeit that we've been so privileged to learn from Shlomo and from all the chevra that Shlomo attracts. So I just thank you and bless you all.
Amen. Thank you so much. Well, our next speaker is Reb Yisroel Finman. Dr. Joshua, thank you so much. Rebbe and Lilian, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay. This is really awesome. Just seeing people, old friends that I haven't seen in decades, and seeing the Israeli people that I've never met before. I would certainly like to meet you my next trip to Israel. Nice to see Chaver that I've never met before, because we're all linked together through Shlomo. I just wanted to say some tidbits, because everybody's giving their perspective of it, and it's really beautiful that we're hearing everybody's perspective, that we have something that we share with each other is our connection with Shlomo and how we came about, and we all have some strange stories, mine also. I met Shlomo when I was 14. He came to my high school, predominantly black high school, and did a concert, blew me away. I actually saw something good there, but I couldn't follow up because I was just 14. Going from Newark into the city was not on the agenda. And then before I wound up at the House of Prayer in 1970, I got my second jolt about Shlomo, and that was on a commune where David Dean had moved out to this commune. And I had a friend, one of my high school friends called me up and he said, these Jews moved in there and they're really spiritual. And I told him, there's no such thing as Jewish spirituality. That's why I'm involved with Yogi Bhajan and Buddhism and Zen and all the rest of that. You know, we grew up in a neighborhood with 45 shuls. They weren't anything that we wanted. And he said, no, this guy and the people who moved in here and they come here for Shabbos, their rabbi is Shlomo Carlebach. And that got me going. So I spent several months there, and then finally moved on in the beginning of 1970 into the House of Love and Prayer, going there for Shabbos, and then living there after Pesach until it closed, the first House of Love and Prayer. When I first walked into the House of Love and Prayer, I saw exactly what Rachel Trugman saw, all these candles, women taking time. It took an hour and a half for the women to light candles, one by one by one. And I didn't want to say anything, but I actually did. I told Meira, who had greeted me, saying, we waited for you for so long. And I used that on a lot of people that came through the front door. Oh, we've been waiting for you for so long. So I said, listen, you know, my mother, my bubby, they light candles, but you know, it takes like 1 minute. Don't they like start before the sunset? And she said, oh no, they started about a half hour before sunset. And it's going to take about another hour, maybe 45 minutes for everybody to finish lighting candles. An hour and a half. That blew me away and told me there's something here. Between this being Shlomo Carlebach's place and the people lighting candles for an hour and a half, there's something strange going on here and I got to be here. And that's my connection with the House of Love and Prayer. Because after a little while of being there, because I still remembered my Aleph base and a little bit of stuff from Hebrew school, so it freed I basically took over every other weekend or every other Shabbos to do the Shabbos. Look at my notes here. Oh, so one of the things that really, the most important thing that I remember from Shlomo and the House of Open Prayer is whenever he came, which was not very often, a couple times a year. He would come before the summer because he's going to Israel. He'd come before Hanukkah because he's going to Israel. But the few times that he did come to spend time with us, it was always, let's go out to the tree, the big tree at the park, at the Presidio. And we would go, you know, it'd be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we'd go and sit under the tree and learn Torah. And that's how Shabbos morning would begin. And it was great, you know. I like to sit under a tree where it's safer. 50 years later, it's still going on. there were so many people from so many walks of life that came into the House of Love and Prayer. It was amazing. I think every other Jewish center of some sort, or kiruv, sorry for that saying such a word, kiruv, but people that were reaching out were just reaching out to Jews. But at the House of Love and Prayer, everybody from every walk of life came, and everybody came with their story, and everybody was looking for your story. So it was really an incredible thing to share who we are to everybody that came through. And then there was not just the people that just came checking it out, but there was some like really good people coming with us, like the mountain Buddhists who came from up in Bulgaria, where the Georgian Jews are. They would come all the time. Or Sufi Sam, nice Jewish guy. I think he was from Brooklyn or Queens, and bringing in all the Sufis with him, all the Jewish Sufis. And all the places we went with Shlomo, Jewish centers, ashrams, churches, went to a school for up and coming Christian pastors, and the nuns. Dancing with the nuns was like a vault when we went there. Just so many things that Shlomo opened to beyond what I had always felt and known was a very home-based orthodoxy. It's in the shul, it's in your home, and that's about it. But reaching out to other people and reaching out to non-Jews was just unheard of. So it really did open doors in a very great way with Shlomo. Ma'od. It was a great place. It was a unique place. It turned my life around. I was heading towards India, looking for the spirituality, not finding it anywhere until I got that phone call from a friend telling me about Shlomo Carlebach. Because the seeds that Shlomo gave me when I was 14 years old were able to sprout when I heard that there's a Meshuggah place just for me, called the House of Love and Prayer. Strangest name in a shul I ever caught, the House of Love and Prayer. I'm definitely interested. It changed my life. Changed my life. I was able to find my soul. And I've been working on it for 50 years, and I'm still trying to find it a little bit, but it's been a great journey. And Be'ezrat Hashem will continue to be a great journey for quite some time to go. So when the House of Love and Prayer closed down, because Haight-Ashbury closed down, it wasn't the mid-60s. By the time it hit the early 70s, it was a whole different world. A lot of ugly drugs, a lot of just days were over. The great days of the Haight-Ashbury dissipated, and there it went, and the house closed with it because it just couldn't sustain itself in the way that it was supposed to be. And the consensus was not to have a commune anymore, but to build a community. We'll find a building, which Arya and others found a building on 9th Avenue and got somebody to back the mortgage, and they're back in business, and almost nobody was allowed to live there, just the Shamish of Pesach Whites, living up on the second floor, third floor. And that's the way it was. We had a community. The community was great. It wasn't quite like it was in the House of Love and Prayer #1, because everything had changed. But we worked to it. We did a lot of great things, reaching out to a lot of people, Yom Tovim, networking with some of the other rabbis in town, odd enough. And my roommate, David Hertzberg, and I, we were kind of running the second one in a lot of ways because we both had Jewish backgrounds. We remember what we learned, and Kabbalah Shabbos, teaching. For 1 year, we even opened up a Hebrew school on Sunday mornings for kids that didn't like the Hebrew schools they were going to. And that was a very special thing. Absolutely very special. And I still remember every time we sat down with the kids and we learned Torah and we sang music and we danced. We probably had the most awesome Hebrew school for that 1 year anywhere in California. It was great, absolutely great. So that's about everything that I want to say, other than one more thing. Shlomo taught us a lot, but if you were to ask me, give me one Torah, give over one Torah that Shlomo gave you in the House 11 prayer, I would say I don't remember any of them. I thank God that Shlomo had the wherewithal to bring in a tape recorder, even back in the days of those big suitcases that were tape recorders, and hundreds, if not more, of sessions of Torah, learning Torah, were put on tape. For that, thank God. We have Sorim like that, we have digitals, we've got numerous videos on the internet with Shlomo, and thank God for that. But what I got from Shlomo more than anything else, there's two things. When I came back from Denver, that's where I spent my time in between the two house open prayers. I came back to Shlomo because I've been learning in Yeshiva and learning Halacha, of course. And I said, Shlomo, I got to ask you something. And I'm not criticizing you whatsoever. I just want to know. And I told him that according to Halacha, the group, the major portion of the Rabbonim are the ones that decide. But if one person has a different way of looking at something, it goes by Rov, it goes by everybody, by the most people who poskin in such a way. And that's how Halacha goes with it. So I said, I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff that no other rabbis are doing. So what's the heter to do this? And he looked at me. And I said again, I'm not criticizing you. I just want to know. And he said, you want to know something, Yisroel? I really don't know what I'm doing. But I know I have to follow the very tip of my nose. And in your life, you're going to find sometimes you have to follow the very tip of your nose. And I also learned from Shlomo that there's no boundaries when it comes to bringing Hashem's honor into the world. I went to churches with him. I went to all kinds of places with Shlomo. And I understood he was open at all times. And I found that when I was a rabbi in Key West, I worked with all the big churches, because that's the ones that were there. I moved with the non-churches, with whomever. And I put that into my own being of a rabbi. Now I'm working as an independent person. I have a kehillah and elsewhere, and everybody's welcome. I'm learning Torah with Christians, with Jews, with Israelis, with Americans, with Muslims, and it's great. Just reaching all out and exchanging all the beauty of what we believe and putting aside the things that we don't agree with, put them to the side. The Shlomo did us constantly. Where's the similarities? Where are the things that we have in common? And these are the things I learned from Shlomo. I watched him so much because that's what I wanted to know. Halacha you can learn in a book. Halacha you can learn from anybody. But what is your rabbi doing? How is he being a rabbi? And how do I become a rabbi? Shlomo became who he was, step by step by step. And he gave me that chizuk throughout my life to constantly look at who am I? And look at me again and again and again. And how much am I growing? Am I a better rabbi today than I was yesterday? For that, I thank you, Shlomo, so much. Without you, who knows where I would be? Who knows where my children and grandchildren would be? Because of you, I've got 5 great children. I've got 13 beautiful grandchildren. It's such a gewalt. Thank you so much for interfering in my life, Shlomo. And I hope to meet you in Shemayim when the time is over. Thank you so much, everybody.
After 120 years. Yeshikayach,
Amen, amen.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Susie Shiner.
Hi, everybody. They call me Shoshana, really. And I want to tell you that the first time I met Shlomo, I was about 21 years old in New York City in an apartment. And I had my little girl in my arms, and I said to myself, this is the man that I want to follow. So me and my husband, Luciano, drove cross country to get to the House of Love and Prayer. But we didn't get there at first because it took us a while to settle down in San Francisco. And then finally, I weaved my way in through Marasha Levy, who was the mikveh lady. And I got myself to the House of Love and Prayer only to find David Hertzberg. And that was a whiff of Yiddishkeit that I will never forget. Does everybody hear me?
We 100% hear you. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. So what happened was there were at least 30 people at the House of Love and Prayer with David Hertzberg at our first Pesach Seder. We were down on our pillows on the floor, squatting, enjoying ourselves the whole evening. That was that. And David also showed me a tiny, tiny sukkah, the tiniest sukkah in the world. We were able to crawl into it. Okay, so then it got time to have a wedding for me and my husband because we were not formally married with a chuppah. So I had the privilege to talk to Shlomo on that public telephone in the house. And he asked me a few questions: who I am, who he is, am I in love, do I want to get married? And I answered all his questions. And the next thing we knew, everybody was getting up, all ready for a wedding for Eliyahu and Shoshana. And it really happened. And I remember being carried up the stairs, up the huge flight of stairs behind the house. And that's about what I remember. Then I have another memory. There was this, we built a sukkah in the back of the House of Love and Prayer. This was on 9th Avenue. There was a nice yard out back, and we built a beautiful sukkah. And everybody was sitting around and having a good time. And there was this one guy, convert, and he decided to tell some dirty jokes. And all of a sudden, the sukkah fell down on our heads. I'm not joking. It really happened. That's my memory of the House of Love and Prayer. And then we had to go to a meeting with, I forgot his name, Marvin somebody. And he decided that we had to close the house because the Moshav was happening. And I said to Shlomo, is this for real? Do we really have to leave the house because the Moshav is happening? He said, yes, that the Moshav is happening. So you should go to Israel. I said, okay, that was it. We actually, not too many months later, packed our bags and went to Israel. First accommodation was Kfar Chabad. Then we moved to Jerusalem. And 8 years later, we moved to the Moshav. Thanks to Shlomo, I have 6 children because Miriam passed away, but we have 7 children and about 18 grandchildren. And everybody knows that the fire destroyed the Moshav, and one of the houses was mine. But I'm slowly recovering, and the house is getting patched up, and I will be back in my house. And thank God there's a great future for the Moshav, and everybody's welcome to spend Shabbos, the Heilige Shabbos that Shlomo dreamed that everybody would come to on our dear Moshav. Blessing everybody with health and peace from the Holy Land.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Shoshana Shiner. Thank you so, so much. Our next speaker is Lynn Reichman. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Lynn Reichman, and from the first House of Love and Prayer. I was just 16 years old when I moved into the first house at the very beginning of 1969. And I lived there for most of 2 years until it closed at the very end of 1970. So I was one of the longest residents. It all began when Shlomo had invited me after a concert in Los Angeles to a wedding the following weekend at the house. And I flew up to San Francisco intending to only stay for that weekend. But instead I stayed for those 2 whole years, never wanting to leave that holy place ever. Since then, I have never experienced anything even close to what the first house was like. I truly, deeply loved it. So I'm speaking now about the first house only. And I just wrote a book. The working title is The First House, which is currently in the editing stage. And it's a history only about the first house. And I can't shorten over 90,000 words into 10 minutes here, but here's some thoughts about one aspect of it. A lot of people don't realize that there were 2 houses, and not only in 2 locations, but completely different entities with completely different styles and spirits. As someone once said to me, oh, like the first and second temples. And he was so right. I read that the first temple, rather like the first house, had the attributes of Abraham, of Hesed, loving kindness, and the second one of Yitzhak, of Gevurah, of strength. The second house at 19th Irving was also called the Yeshiva and was created specifically for educational purposes. And of course, learning is very important. But people lived elsewhere in their own apartments. The first house on Arguello also had beautiful learning. It was mostly in Shlomo style. But the biggest difference was that it was an open house where anyone could come stay. It was a commune and an actual home to many of us. Just imagine living 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely enveloped in Shlomo's intense spirituality and his unique style of Judaism, which still pervaded the house, even in between his frequent visits. It was beyond belief. I was thinking before I wrote this, why was the first house so special? It was for many, many reasons, but the main one was the love and the haknasat orhim, hospitality, but the word doesn't do the concept justice. The first house embodied such a high form of Hesed. The house saved many Jewish souls, and maybe even their lives. The unlocked door was critical for many of them, particularly from its beginning in 1968 through 1969, and in much of 1970, everyone was welcome to stay. Shlomo's open heart led to the creation of an open house, where, as he passionately envisioned, the doors would never be closed. As Miriam Sukkot said to me about when they were there, what she said was, it was clear from the very beginning that the door was never closed. The door was never locked, ever. And everyone who came was welcome. We tried to keep the completely open door policy. Love was the lifeblood of the first house of love and prayer, which made it so exceptional. Love was such a fundamental and crucial aspect of the magic of the first house, and its hospitality that was beyond all else. The very core of the house was love, as exemplified by Shlomo, and it radiated throughout it. Caring, giving, sharing, helping. When the house was loving, it was flying high. The essence of the first house was a manifestation of Shlomo's remarkable capacity to love people, and how very few could do that like Shlomo. Everyone who ever met Shlomo knows the sensation of feeling love that they experienced during even a few minutes of one of his famous greetings. But to also experience that love while living full time in his holy house, day after day, night after night, was a taste of the world to come. In all those years since, I've never been any place like it, no place at all. To be surrounded by such spiritual, caring, loving kindness. And we didn't just learn about Shlomo's special style of Jewish life, we lived it full time. It was a place where Shlomo could send the longing souls he encountered on his travels around the world. And for even those who just wandered in, he'd tell people, I have this little house in San Francisco. You're always welcome. The whole world is invited. And he'd hand out his famous white business cards with the address of the house to everyone. He must have given out so many thousands. At the house, the women lived upstairs and the men in the basement, and the prayer room was the soul of the house. But I often felt that the kitchen was the heart of the house, where there was another form of Hagnas Orchim. I loved spending most of my days at the house cooking for people, feeding people, anyone who walked in, and listening to them while in the kitchen, sometimes all night, as they told me about their dreams and soul quests. I met such amazing people, from those who are well known to the many lesser known holy souls who are also essential. There were so many fascinating people, and altogether they made up the magnificent whole that was the first house. And again, like with Avraham, there was always food for anyone who came. We were poor, but there was usually enough in the tzedakah box from visitors and residents, even like me. And in the last year, we got government surplus food because we'd feed anyone off the streets. And just like much of the house was filled with music, sometimes there was even joyful singing and dancing in that kitchen. At the house, I was taught a form of Judaism from Shlomo that has stayed with me ever since as the core of my life. Again, nothing compares. I've been a part of other shuls, but in my soul, I still always come home to what is essentially a version of Judaism practiced at the first house. I took a part of the first house with me in my heart. My whole life changed at the first house, and I have no idea what it would have been without it. It made me who I am, part of how I think, and led me to a path of shuls and study. But oh, how deeply I still miss being in the house with so many holy people. Many were the most remarkable people I ever met. And being surrounded by the indescribable spiritual depth I found there. How I still long for a source of Judaism that is so traditional, yet is wild, creative, imaginative, adventurous, loving, and free as the first house of love and prayer. So I don't know if I have more time to say anything or not.
Awesome. Awesome. Lynn, that was beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
Okay. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for letting me speak.
So awesome. Everybody, thank you to everyone, to Yehuda Katz, to everyone who helped to make this program. Ohel Shlomo welcomes your thoughts and comments on the program. Please email at ohelshlomo613@gmail.com. Please send us your suggestions for future live streams. Please share with us your recollections of Reb Shlomo's minhagim. We're waiting to hear from you. Again, you guys, thank you so much. This was an awesome program, mind-blowing. At least for me, it was mind-blowing. I don't know. I can only imagine. Good job. Awesome. Thank you. So thank you so, so much. if everyone wants to unmute and say hello to each other, maybe this is a good time.
Thank you, Ephraim. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Elyah and Miriam.
Corresponded by
Thank
email.
you, Reuven. Thank you, Yisroel.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Yehudit.
Thank you, Ephraim.
Nosson.
Thank you, Hashem.
everybody.
It's all
Thank you,
getting together.
Eliezer.
Hey, Lynn, you're a gavalt.
Joshua and Lilian.
So you must have known.
Good to see you all.
Josh and Lilian.
So wonderful to see
Hey, Josh and
everyone.
Lilian.
Thank you, everybody.
Yankele Shemesh.
Hey,
Laser.
Eliezer, this is awesome idea. Happy birthday.
Soil.
Love has no space or time, you know?
On a shock.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic to see
Yaakov
these
Gelman.
faces again.
Anyway,
Oh, man, that was great. Well, we're all saying hello to each other. That's all.
Yay, Aryae. Thank you, Aryae. Shalom, shalom.
Hello to myself. Hello to you, everybody.
Reuven. Oh.
Thank you, Reuven.
Oh, thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Good to see you, Robert. Thank you. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Oh, where are you?
Bye, Lynn.
I hope we all get together on Zoom again soon. It's wonderful.
Yes, it is wonderful. Agreed.
It's wonderful to see everyone. Magic.
Thank you. Keep up your good plan.
I hope we all get together on Zoom again soon. It's
Amen.
wonderful.
Would be great.
I was thinking of
It would be great.
It's wonderful to see everyone. Magic.
Be well, everybody. Stay strong
Oh, they left.
and be who you are.
Yeah.
Take care.
Right, so
Erev Tov, everybody. Erev Tov.
Bye, Aryae.